Chapter 401. Dragon doesn't hurt people? Dean slightly raised his eyebrows as he looked at the black shadow that was flying into the sky. Are you saying that such a big guy grew up as a vegetarian? Reed replied, Master, don't you know that the dragon is the mount of the god of light? It eats the monsters outside the giant wall. It doesn't hurt people. Dean quietly looked at the black giant that turned into a black dot and disappeared into the horizon. He didn't continue to talk with Reed. He felt a trace of unusual feeling in his heart. Compared to the divinity that Reed talked about, the cruel reality and the surrounding made him more inclined to believe in the bestiality. Let's go, Dean said. Reed didn't think much about it as he issued an order. Everyone set off. Sergei and Gwyneth were at Dean's side. The 3 generals of the Gophers were next to them. There were 300 elite soldiers sent by the military. The murderous temperament of the elite soldiers was completely different from that of ordinary soldiers. It didn't take long for them to attract the attention of the residents on the street. Although the rain had stopped, there was still water on the ground that could wet the shoes. The horses galloped all the way to the northern military region. From Dean's castle to the northern military region, they passed through the main street of the commercial district. Dean was quickly recognized by the people and was followed by cheers and shouts along the way. Dean arrived at the northern military region after more than an hour. He took Sergei, Gwyneth, and the 3 generals of the Gophers to the headquarters of the military region. Lorenzo and several other older generals were in front of the sand table and discussing the military strategy. They had to stop talking after Dean arrived. Master, are you going to the battlefield again? Lorenzo knew the purpose of Dean's visit from the messenger's mouth. He felt helpless in his heart. Dean was definitely the most active master he had ever seen. Dean nodded and smiled. Since the general knows, then I won't delay any longer. I hope that I can go out as a knight. You can give me a staff officer and some troops. I hope that I can personally go to the battlefield and kill the enemy. I won't retreat in the face of danger. Lorenzo felt some pain in his temples. Master, we all know your intentions. But the battlefield is different from other places. The changes are too dangerous. If there's an accident, then the military won't be able to escape the blame. I hope that you won't embarrass us. Dean shook his head and said in a serious tone, Since the general is worried that my death will put you in a difficult situation, then I will write this letter as my last words. Everything is voluntary and has nothing to do with the military. Is that okay? Lorenzo was speechless. He thought that if Dean really died, then what would be the use of writing a letter? How much credibility would it have? If the Dark Church or other forces took the opportunity to guide the public opinion and use this matter to attack, then wouldn't he be unable to defend himself? Lorenzo didn't know whether Dean really didn't understand or deliberately pretended not to understand. But he was more inclined to the latter. After all, the boy was only 16 years old. Although he was proficient in the field of inventions, but after all, he was still a teenager. Life was about experience. The invention could only be regarded as a skill, but it didn't mean that he had rich life experience. Lorenzo pondered for a little. Master, since you insist, then I will grant your request. But I have only one request. I hope you can agree to it. Dean replied, There is no harm in saying it. Since Master wants to go to the battlefield, then please obey the arrangement of the military. We pay attention to the whole of the war and not the individual. So I hope that you will cooperate with our deployment and listen to our commands. Don't lead the troops to kill indiscriminately. Is it okay? Dean looked at Dean in a serious tone. Of course, no problem. I will obey the deployment of the military. But I hope that the general won't send me to the support department because I am a master. I think I have the ability to kill the enemy on the battlefield. Dean was very straightforward. Lorenzo felt relieved and nodded. Naturally not. Grandmaster, please come take a look. Dean went up and came to the sand table. Now that the barbarians have occupied the Golden Wall, they are divided into 3 groups. The first group is attacking the boundary wall of the residential area, trying to occupy the residential area. The second group is gathering at the main exit of the commercial district, the Red River. But I suspect that they are only here to contain us. Their real purpose is to occupy the residential area. Lorenzo pointed at the sand table and explained to Dean, "At present, there are people guarding the boundary wall of the residential area. But there's a shortage of manpower. There's a gap in the Forest of Pain outside the boundary wall. From the Forest of Pain, we can take a detour to the commercial district. But because of the dangerous terrain of the Forest of Pain and your legendary steam rifle is not good in the Forest of Pain, so it must be guarded by elite troops." Lorenzo looked at Dean. "I will dispatch you 2,000 elite troops and a colonel-level staff officer to guard this place. What do you think?" Dudian glanced at the sand table and used his quick reading ability to take in the entire battlefield outside the commercial district. The situation was very obvious. The Forest of Pain was indeed the road to the commercial district, but the terrain was dangerous. It was suitable for guerrilla warfare in the jungle. It was impossible for a large-scale battle to break out. General Lorenzo had sent 2,000 elite soldiers to guard the forest. It could be said that the task was very easy and the safety factor was extremely high. "All right," Dean promised. "I promise to complete the task. Otherwise, I hope the general will punish me according to the military law." Lorenzo was relieved to see Dean agree. It seemed that he was overthinking. After all, Dean was just a teenager. He immediately said, "I hope you won't let me down." Dean nodded. His expression was very serious, but there was a trace of excitement. Lorenzo's face showed a touch of smile as he saw Dean's appearance. In that case, the master should set off immediately. "Yes." Dean responded in a military manner and turned to leave. Several generals looked at each other after Dean left. They smiled and shook their heads. "I have never seen such a troublesome master. I have never seen such a young master. After all, he is too young. Young people are always restless and like to toss and turn. His temperament is good. He isn't like some consortiums who take advantage of the war to make money from refugees. It's good to dispatch him to the Forest of Pain. We can't control him." The generals shook their heads and smiled. They withdrew their gazes and returned to the previous deduction topic with the flags in their hands. Dean set off from a military headquarters and went to the Forest of Pain. The horn of the military's counterattack had sounded on the battlefield. The rain had stopped, and the dark clouds had melted. The artillery that was previously restricted by the rain had once again appeared on top of the city wall. The barbarians who were attacking the boundary wall of the residential area tasted the fierce, killing weapon of the military. The defensive position of the city changed from a disadvantage to an advantage. Countless barbarians tried to invade the residential area. The giant frog, who was responsible for attacking the high wall, became a huge target in front of the artillery. They lost all the advantages. Time passed day by day amidst the roar of the war. The barbarians paid a heavy price to attack the residential area. However, they were still unable to take it down. They immediately changed their strategy. They dispersed into small groups and invaded the commercial district from various areas. However, the barbarians were too late. By the time they split their troops into small skirmishes, the military's long-awaited new weapon, the steam rifle, had finally entered the fray. It was the legendary military divine art that had recently spread like wildfire. The appearance of the steam rifle instantly ruined the plan of the barbarians to annihilate the barbarians. Instead, they suffered heavy losses and were forced to retreat step by step. In just 3 days, they were forced to retreat to the broken Golden Wall. The fierce battle continued. At the same time, in the Forest of Pain, Dean led 2,000 elite soldiers and 300 elite soldiers that were sent by the military. They were stationed at the edge of the forest. Every day, they would catch some wild animals and barbecue them to eat and drink. When Dean came to the Forest of Pain, there were several barbarian teams that tried to invade the area. However, they were easily killed by Dean's troops. In fact, he didn't need to stay in the area. The colonel-level staff officer was enough to deal with the barbarians. After all, he had crushed the barbarians in terms of military strength and terrain advantage. It was a complete one-sided massacre. It was a free credit for him to stay in the forest. This was given by the military, and Dean was willing to accept it. Sergei grabbed a roasted rabbit leg and passed it to Dean, who was reading a book. "Master, it's too boring here. They're just some minions." When are we going back? We are wasting time here, and there are many blood mosquitoes at night. Dean took the rabbit's leg and lifted his eyes from the book. He didn't care about the grease and dust on a rabbit's leg. He said while eating, "When we finish eating, we will go back. Let's leave this place to Spear." Chapter 402. Dudian obviously wasn't joking with Sergei. After eating the rabbit leg, he called Spear's staff officer. There weren't any barbarians this morning. I guess they were killed and retreated. I'll leave this place to you. I'll take some people back and see if I'm needed in the front line. Spear looked at Dean in surprise. Master, how can we do this? We have to stay here. You can do it. Dean patted his shoulder and passed by him. He got on the horse and called Sergei, Gwyneth, and the 3 mole generals. They left the Forest of Pain with 300 elite soldiers. They didn't return to the castle, but went directly to the military headquarters. Master, are we really going to leave like this? Sergei carefully looked at Dean. I'm just saying, don't take it too seriously. If the military blames us, what's there to blame? Dudian indifferently said. Did any barbarians cross us and enter the commercial district while we were guarding? No. Dean patted the horse and accelerated the speed of the march. Although he couldn't get any information or read the newspaper, as he was stationed in the Forest of Pain for the past 3 days, but it was obvious that the barbarians had been repelled. After all, the weather had been dry for the past 3 days after the heavy rain. Although the temperature was only 3 or 4 degrees, but it didn't hinder the artillery. In addition to the artillery, he had made a lot of molds for the steam guns. He could mass-produce them and put them into the war. In such an era of cold weapons, the appearance of steam guns was a complete bully. The war was over before it started. Military headquarters. Command. Lorenzo and the generals stood in front of the sand table. The hills and lakes on the sand table didn't change much. The only difference was that the area inside the Golden Wall was covered with red flags. Now, there were only a few red flags on the hills in front of the Red Tail River. They were the only barbarians that had invaded the area behind the Golden Wall. Immediately send a battalion with 200 steam guns to annihilate them. Lorenzo reached out and pulled out the red flags. He threw them to the side and ordered in an indifferent tone. The adjutant at the side immediately passed down the order. Everyone, it's time to recapture the Golden Wall. Lorenzo looked at the gray wall. It used to be their proud territory. Dispatch the cannons on the boundary wall of the residential area. Also send a regiment. I want to hear the news that the Golden Wall has fallen before nightfall. Yes, Commander, with our current manpower, even if we recapture a section of the Golden Wall, we won't be able to defend it. Although the production speed of the steam guns is very fast, but the time is too short. The regular army is bedridden and their physical strength hasn't recovered yet. How about we activate the Golden Wall? Another general said. Lorenzo narrowed his eyes. Activating the Golden Wall is our ultimate means. We don't need to use it for the time being. If we expose all our cards in this war, most of them will be infiltrated by the Holy Church and the Dark Church in the future. We can't easily unsheath a sword or it will rust. I also think so. Moreover, with the destructive power of the steam guns, as long as we capture a section of the Golden Wall, it won't be difficult to capture the rest of the place. All the factories can produce 8,000 steam guns a day. Moreover, the efficiency is gradually increasing. After the Golden Wall is captured, we can get nearly 10,000 steam guns tomorrow. In addition to the previous ones, we can completely recapture the Golden Wall. Another general said, if it doesn't work, then let's send the Fire Warriors. Lorenzo faintly smiled. The Fire Warriors are our last line of defense. They don't need to go on the battlefield. The battle will end here. Previously, when they were trying to snatch the Golden Wall, the damage was too serious. They won't be too stubborn now. After all, compared to the broken Golden Wall, they have occupied the Red Maple Mountains. It is easier to defend and more difficult to attack. The surrounding people were stunned for a moment before they came to a realization. This time the inner wall didn't send reinforcements. I don't know if the barbarians expected this or if there are other reasons. I hope that the inner wall won't come out at this time. Lorenzo whispered in a low voice. They were startled as they looked at each other. They frowned as they felt that the situation was unusual. Dudian asked for a pot of wine from a roadside pub on the way back to the military headquarters. He borrowed the newspaper from the owner. He threw the wine to Sergei as he read the newspaper. He couldn't help but smile. He patted the horse's head, and it trotted forward. Dudian went to see Lorenzo after he arrived at the military headquarters. Lorenzo had a headache as he saw the active master, but he had the experience from last time, so he had a way to deal with it. He sent Dudian to follow the siege troops to a battlefield with a greater advantage. The danger was relatively low. Dudian readily agreed without any objection. "Young master, why do I feel that the general is fooling us? I read in the newspaper that the most intense battle is at the Golden Wall. Why did he say that the place we're going to is more important? Is it more important than the Golden Wall?" Sergei asked curiously as he rode on his horse. Dudian seriously replied, "Don't talk nonsense. The general must have his reasons. We are soldiers, so we have to carry out the orders." Sergei strangely looked at Dudian. He thought that Dudian was such an obedient person. How come he didn't know about it before? He turned to look at Gwyneth. Gwyneth winked at him. He was startled for a moment, but suddenly thought of something. He turned around and saw the three gophers. The three gophers were also looking at him. Sergei laughed and threw the wine in his hand. "General Dairon, do you want a drink?" Dairon smiled. "I don't drink when I march. It's a waste of time." He threw the wine back to Sergei. "No wonder you are the general, and I'm just a soldier." Sergei laughed as he reached out to catch the wine. He turned his head and took a sip. The smile on his face slowly disappeared. Before sunset, the messenger rode a fast horse, shouting loudly as he galloped through the streets of the commercial district. "The Golden Wall has been recaptured." The residents who heard the news were surprised. They looked at each other and then burst into cheers. Some of them were packing their luggage and preparing to migrate to the inner wall area. Since the rain stopped 3 days ago, the newspapers had the news of the victory of the counterattack. In the past 3 days, the situation of the war had been completely reversed. The territory that had been taken away by the military was slowly being taken back. However, no matter how many victories there were, it was not as exciting as the news of the Golden Wall being retaken. The restless hearts of the people in the commercial district and residential district had stabilized after the Golden Wall was recaptured. The military's counterattack didn't stop there. There were news of the victories in different areas. Dudian was stationed in the Forest of Pain, and the barbarians were annihilated. He was sent to other areas to repel the barbarians. Chapter 403. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. The Golden Wall that they had seized back had once again become the military's barrier. The defeated barbarians were driven out of the Golden Wall and set up camp in the vast Red Maple Mountains. They didn't want to give up their base so easily. After all, although the Red Maple Mountains belonged to the outer region, it was still within the stronghold. It was rich in resources. Once they left, they would be blocked by the stronghold again and be exiled forever. The military didn't rush to attack the Red Maple Mountains. Instead, they reorganized the soldiers and strengthened the defense of the Golden Wall. At the same time, the post-war inventory was gradually published in the newspapers. The casualties of various regions and the losses caused by the barbarians' invasion were calculated and published in the financial groups and the military newspapers. There were many generals and colonels who had sacrificed their lives in the war. They were published as heroes. Compared to most of the heroes who had died, several commanders and generals who had outstanding performance in the battle were also published and praised. Dean was also one of them. Dean saw that the military didn't pursue immediately. He knew that they were afraid of the barbarians' ambush. After all, the Red Maple Mountains had fallen into the hands of the barbarians. Moreover, the military wanted to wait for the regular army to recover before launching an attack. After all, the longer they dragged, the more steam guns they would be able to produce. The more they would be able to win, and the lower the consumption of soldiers would be. "We should go back." Dean called Sergei and Gwyneth to get on the horse. He declined the escort of the 3 generals and the rest of the soldiers as he returned to the castle. The 3 generals didn't continue to insist. In the past few days, they had seen that Dean and Gwyneth were extraordinary. Their strength wasn't inferior to theirs. It would be very difficult to hurt Dean with their protection. Moreover, the war inside the Golden Wall was over. Even if Dean suffered casualties, it wouldn't have much to do with the military. The battle is finally over. I can finally go back and have a good rest. On the horse, Sergei galloped, gulping down the wind as he shouted in the wilderness. Dean faintly smiled. He waited for Sergei to finish shouting. The war has just begun. Do you want to be lazy? Sergei was surprised. Just begun. Previously, it was the war between the military and the barbarians. Now it is our war. Dean said, both of you will be busy after we go back. Sergei woke up. I almost forgot about the damn Melon Consortium. They had sent 2 senior hunters, but none of them died. One of them is a woman. She seems to have black weaver magic marks. The ability of this magic mark is terrible, especially in the aspect of assassination. She had shrunk into the ground during the battle. She was unscathed until the end of the battle. It's simply shameless. Dean couldn't help but think of Glenn's appearance. He smiled. It's good that she didn't die. Hire her to join our consortium. She will be one of us in the future. You want to recruit her? Sergei shook his head. It's not easy to recruit a senior hunter unless she doesn't want to live or the Melon Consortium collapses. Dean smiled, but didn't open his mouth. Gwyneth silently looked at Dean. Master, yesterday was a good opportunity. We would have made great achievements if we had led the troops to attack. But you don't seem to be willing to fight for military merits. Why is that? Oh, Dean looked at her with interest. What do you think? Gwyneth slightly frowned. I can't figure it out. That's why I asked young master. Dean smiled. Sometimes you can't act too much. In addition, it's not your own business, so you don't have to work so hard. It's enough if you do it well. If you do it well, then it's perfect. If you try too hard, then it will be a flaw. There was a trace of doubt in Gwyneth's eyes. Think about the problem from interests and results. Dean smiled. He patted the horse and galloped away. Sergei looked at Dean's back and muttered, I knew that he was so honest. He certainly didn't have good intentions. Go. The residents along the street recognized Dean as they returned to the commercial district. They cheered loudly and followed behind the horse's hooves. Dean saw hundreds of people standing on both sides of the road by the time he reached the river. They were holding flowers in their hands. It seemed that they were waiting for something. It seems that they are here to welcome us. Sergei was surprised but excited at the same time. Dean nodded and slowly rode the horse towards them. The people standing at the outermost edge screamed uncontrollably when they saw Dean. In an instant, the previous noise turned into a neat uproar. Everyone gathered towards Dean and others. Some even fell to the ground and were trampled by other excited people. Dudian was riding on the horse. Naturally, he noticed that some women wearing skirts had accidentally fallen into the crowd. He hurriedly glanced at them and then retracted his gaze. There was a gentle smile on his face. Coupled with the handsome knight's armor, he looked like an upright knight of light. Many women on both sides screamed loudly. Countless flowers were thrown to the top of Dudian's head. Some of them fell on the armor, and some fell on the hair. The crowd followed and cheered all the way as Dean rode his horse. Gwyneth was riding behind Dean. She naturally saw the figures who had accidentally fallen. She wanted to say something, but the words were drowned out by the tsunami of cheers. She was silent as she silently looked at the back of the thin youth. It seemed that his back was shining in the sunshine and flowers. On the other side, Sergei grinned. His face was full of smiles. Although he knew that these cheers, applause, and flowers weren't for him, but seeing the people around him cheering so crazily, his heart was still very happy. The road will eventually come to an end. Dean came to the front of the castle. He dismounted and turned to look at the people behind him. He raised his hand and waved. Once again, there was a cheer. He didn't say anything and turned to enter the castle. Crone and Noyce quickly came out of the castle. Noyce took Dean's horse. Crone looked at Dean. Master, you are finally back. Something terrible has happened in the past few days. Dean looked calm. Tell the people outside to go back. Tell them that I want to rest and quiet. Crone was surprised but nodded. All right. Chapter 404. Crone quickly stepped forward. Master, Mel family's George, Mark, and Sarah Mel were secretly arrested by the military when you left for the expedition. The news only spread in a small range. Later, old Feline got the news and spread it to the noble circle in the commercial district. Mellon Consortium's stock plummeted, and there were problems in all the industrial chains. What happened next? Dean took a sip of coffee and calmly asked. Crone whispered. Mellon Consortium was going to negotiate with the military to release the three of them. But the military didn't agree, so the matter was left unsettled. So they didn't start a war? No. They have a bit of patience. Dean faintly smiled. Are they still in military? Crone nodded. Yes. The other members of Mellon Consortium saw that they were still in prison, so they withdrew their funds in large quantities. Mellon Consortium is a name only. I heard old Feline say that he spread the news that Mellon Consortium had rebelled and colluded with barbarians to frame you. So the major nobles of Mellon Consortium have withdrawn from Mellon Consortium. Many of them have joined our New World Consortium. Dean nodded. Now the war is over. Let's see how the old dogs will bite back. Crone was surprised to see that there was no surprise on Dean's face. He thought that Dean would be overjoyed, but he didn't expect Dean's reaction to be so dull. He couldn't figure out Dean's thoughts. Master, Mellon Consortium is about to be overthrown. Shouldn't we celebrate? There is nothing to celebrate. Dean indifferently said. The moment you put the arrow, aim, and shoot, the result has already come out. Moreover, this is just the first step we have to take. There is nothing to be happy about. Crone was startled. He suddenly thought of something and whispered. Young master, I have arranged for the people you sent to the residential area to stay in the hotel outside. Now the situation is chaotic. I am worried that they will sneak in and harm you. So, Dean was silent for a moment. Tell Noyce to take them to the commercial district to pick a house to buy. The war has just ended and the prices of properties have fallen. Send a letter to old Feline and ask him to use the resources of the consortium to buy a lot of properties at low prices. After a few years, the price of houses will rise again. Crone was stunned. Yes. He turned and left. The war had come to an end for the time being. The commercial district and the residential district were in chaos. The barbarian invasion had dealt a devastating blow to the outer edge of the Golden Wall. Even inside the Golden Wall, the residents near the high wall had suffered heavy losses. Houses were destroyed and manors were burnt. Everything needed to be rebuilt. The pain left by the war was engraved on the land. It was also engraved in the tears on everyone's face. It wasn't only the people living on the outer edge of the Golden Wall who suffered losses. The regular soldiers of the military had fallen ill due to the rain. They had to rely on the reserve army and the conscripted, able-bodied men to make up the numbers. Fortunately, the new legendary steam rifle had appeared, so the reserve army and the conscripted, able-bodied men were able to display terrifying lethality. The war that lasted for about 10 days had destroyed countless families. There were countless victims, but at the same time, there were also a large number of beneficiaries. Among them were various financial groups, as well as many rich people who took the opportunity to make money from the war. They raised prices and sold military supplies, causing their assets to explode in just 10 days. Of course, there were also some rich people who lost their family fortunes, went bankrupt, and became ordinary people. On the day when Dean came back, all parties received the news and sent people to send gifts. They wanted to make friends with the young legendary master as soon as possible. At the same time, the staff of the various consortia sent people to interview Dean. However, Dean refused all of them. Dean wrote a letter to inform Patriarch Old Feline to set up a newspaper agency. In the future, all of his interviews would be conducted in his own newspaper. In this way, the sales of a newspaper would be greatly improved. After all, the best way to create a public figure was to rely on the media. Newspaper was the only means of propaganda in this era. Old Feline's ability to handle matters was very fast. In the afternoon, he sent people to register a newspaper agency. He used a high salary to recruit some staff from other non-consortia. The name of the newspaper agency was very simple. It was called New World News. After the establishment of the newspaper agency, old Foulin handed over the temporary management to Sander. He immediately went to attract some printing factories. He wanted to create a sensation in the market when the first copy of New World News would be sold tomorrow. This required contacts and ways. Fortunately, he was a noble and had Dean as a signboard, so it was easy to find people. Sandro led the interviewers to communicate with Dudeen and set the time for the interview after dinner. After dinner, Dean sat in the hall. Sandro was next to him. In front of him was a woman who was holding a notebook. She exuded an intellectual beauty. Her two young assistants were next to her. Sydney was both excited and nervous as she saw the legendary figure for the first time. Her palms were sweating as she held the quill pen. There was a professional smile on her face as she looked at Dean. "Master, can we start now?" "Let's start." Dean put down the tea and signaled her to ask freely. Of course, this was an issue that had been discussed a long time ago. Sydney took a deep breath and straightened out her throat. "Master Dean, what is your dream since childhood?" "My dream is to become a master of divinity. I want to use divinity to change people's lives. I want to make poverty and suffering far away from the world." Dean smiled as he spoke. Sydney immediately complimented him. "Master is really different from us ordinary people. Your dream from childhood is so great and extraordinary." Dean corrected her. "People never become great because of the greatness of their dreams. They become great because of the realization of their dreams." Shweli was slightly startled. After thinking for a while, a hint of admiration appeared in her eyes. She said, "Master, you really hit the nail on the head. As far as I know, you were born as a commoner. Your achievements today are inseparable from your talent and hard work. Which do you think is more important, talent or hard work?" "Of course, diligence is important. Talent accounts for 30% of success, and 70% depends on diligence." Dean calmly replied. He thought in his heart, "You will know how important talent is when you haven't caught up with the footsteps of others." Sydney nodded. "Master, I've seen many people try very hard, but they still fail. Is it because their talent isn't enough?" Dean replied, "Many people's efforts are just to deceive themselves and show to others. It can only be said that they are trying very hard." Shweli was stunned for a moment. She quickly wrote it down and asked, "Master, according to what you said, gold will always shine, right?" "Yes, as long as it is gold. Unfortunately, most of you are just a stone. You won't shine." Sydney nodded. "Most of us are eager to achieve our dreams like you. We are willing to work hard for it. Do you have any good suggestions?" "Learn to get up early, sleep more. At least there is a possibility that the dream will come true." Shweli covered her mouth and chuckled. "Master, you're so humorous. You've gained both fame and fortune, and you're enjoying endless wealth. How do you view wealth?" "Wealth doesn't make people really happy," Dean replied in a serious tone. "Poor people like to hear rich people say that." Sydney asked, "Master, which one do you think is more important, morality or wealth?" "Without a doubt, of course it is morality," Dean said. "A moral person will be respected and loved from the heart. Even after his death, he will be immortal. But wealth and money will only corrupt people. Unfortunately, most of them were working for rich people." Sydney was in awe as she heard Dean's words. Master is indeed a noble knight. I hope that through today's interview, everyone can learn the spirit of Master and be a kind person. "Thank you for the praise." Dean said, "If we treat people with kindness, then we will be treated with kindness, right? How can we bully you if you aren't kind?" Sydney nodded. "Master, at the beginning of the war, there were rumors that you had colluded with the barbarians. Although it turned out that it was purely a trap set up by the barbarians, but it must have had a great impact on you. What was your mood at that time?" Dean smiled. "There's a saying that a person is not afraid of the shadow. An upright person is not afraid of the slander of others. That's why I didn't pay attention to the rumors and continued my own creation." Unfortunately, how could he ignore the rumors? Shweli's face was full of admiration. She said, "Master, you're really indifferent to fame and fortune. You're indeed the youngest master of magic in history. Thanks to your new magic, we were able to turn the tide in this war. Do you have anything to say?" "It's what I should do. Dean replied, I'm waiting for your thanks. Sydney said, many people think that the outer wall isn't peaceful and the living conditions aren't good. Do you have any good suggestions to appease them? It's meaningless to complain. Use your own hands to create and protect your own home. Dean said, unfortunately, you can't go to the inner wall and you can't leave the giant wall. You are finished. Shweli nodded and said, I believe that everyone will be inspired by your encouragement. After the war, many homes were destroyed and happy families were broken. Do you have anything to say to them? Dean pondered, don't be decadent and don't give up. Each of you is the hope of the world. The people who really built this world are not those extremely extravagant singers, not those scheming politicians, not those treacherous and immoral businessmen, but people who are kind and simple like everyone else. You are the ones who created this world, so don't give up hope. You are the most important people in this world. Where would there be politicians and businessmen if there weren't the cornerstones of the bottom of society? Sydney's eyes lit up. Master, do you really think so? Do you think I'm joking? Dean laughed. Shweli came to her senses and quickly said, No, Master, I was just too emotional. Please forgive me. Oh no, please don't mind me. No, let's continue. Dean said. Chapter 405. Time flew, and the interview gradually came to an end. Master, I heard that you received a title from the Knights Hall during the war, but you didn't accept it. Instead, you rushed to the battlefield. Are you not willing to be a knight? Sydney looked at the draft and asked Dudian. The main purpose of the question was to give Dudian more opportunities to express his thoughts. Dudian smiled. It's because I want to be a knight that I chose to rush to the battlefield. As a knight, I have to fulfill my own knightly standards. That's how a real knight should be. Good. Sydney cheered. Her beautiful eyes were sparkling as she said, Master, thanks to your legendary steam gun, we were able to defeat the barbarians and drive them out of the Golden Wall. Will you create new legendary magic in the future? Dudian smiled. I can't guarantee that I will be able to create a new legendary item, but I will continue to do research in this area. I'll talk about the specific results in the future. In addition to the steam rifle's contribution, we also have to thank the soldiers of the military headquarters who fought hard and exchanged their blood and lives for victory in soil. In addition, we also have to thank the consortiums who actively provided the military with facilities and supplies in the rear. It was their selfless contribution that made us unite against the enemy. Unfortunately, the performance of some of the consortiums disappointed me. Sydney knew what Dudian was going to say, but still asked, Master, who are the individual consortiums you are referring to? I can't say the names of the consortiums as I don't want to have a bad influence on them, but I believe that they will know who I'm talking about if they read this report. I just want to advise them not to make such a mistake in the future. Dudian smiled. Sydney nodded. Thank you, Master. Today's interview was very enjoyable. Thank you for your cooperation. I'm sorry to disturb your precious time. It's getting late. Pay attention to your safety on the way back. Dudian smiled. The next day, the sun was shining brightly in the morning. Military HQ in front of the prison. Two teams of knights wearing dark red armors stood neatly on the grass outside the prison. The style of the armor was well known in the commercial district. It was the exclusive style of the Mel family. There was a dark red flower engraved on the chest of the armor. It was delicate and beautiful. It was very beautiful. On both sides of the night, soldiers in military uniforms surrounded the entire prison. Their faces were cold and their auras were filled with killing intent. The door of the prison slowly opened. Bladder helped George Mel to come out. Mark and Sarah silently followed behind them. They arrived in front of the stairs. The warm sunlight shone through the eaves. George gently raised his hand to block the sun. He only stayed in the dark for a few days, but he felt that the sun was a bit dazzling. He squinted his eyes and slowly went down the stairs with his cane. Mark silently looked at the carriages and knights waiting in front of him. He already knew what kind of earth-shaking changes had taken place in the outside world. He slowly stepped out after George went down the stairs. He hadn't shaved for a few days. His chin was full of beard stubble. He looked like he had gone through a lot of vicissitudes of life. Sarah bit her lips, her slender hands tightly clenched her skirt. She knew that the root of all this was her. If she could go back in time, she would rather use her life in exchange. However, her life obviously couldn't get God's mercy. "Master, please get in the carriage." "Miss, please be careful of the stairs." The carriage of the Mel family slowly left the prison and entered the commercial district. The knights on both sides of the carriage were sitting on tall horses. Their bright red armors were indescribably gorgeous. However, shortly after entering the commercial district, George and the others who were sitting in the carriage heard the sound of cursing coming from outside. The few people who were lost in thought frowned at the same time. "What's going on?" Sarah's face was cold. Her gloomy mood was suddenly filled with anger. She opened the curtain and looked at the busy street. There were a lot of pedestrians standing on the side of the road. They were pointing at them. From time to time, loud curses could be heard from the back of the crowd. Some of them even called out the name Mel family and attached dirty words to it. "Damn lowly people." A trace of anger flashed in Sarah's eyes. She immediately ordered the coachman to stop. She ordered the knight to find the person who was secretly cursing them. But Mark whispered to her, "Sarah, don't meddle in this." Sarah's words stopped in her mouth. She turned to look at her father. She saw his depressed face and couldn't help but feel pain in her heart. She wanted to ask, but suddenly thought of something. She clenched her skirt. "It's that damn Dean. He must have taken advantage of the time when we weren't here to spread rumors and damage the reputation of the Mel family." George, who was sitting opposite to her, slowly closed his eyes. "You have the strength to be angry. Use your brain and think about how to fight back. Anger can't solve the problem." Sarah Mel bit her lips and bowed her head. The carriage passed through the street. Although there were knights on both sides of the carriage, so that the angry civilians didn't dare to be impulsive. But they hid behind the crowd and shouted a few words. The knights couldn't do anything about it. Sarah jumped out of the carriage from the military area to the family castle. She was so angry that her face was red. The curses didn't stop even though she ordered the knights to detour to the remote road. But the family was built in the most prosperous area. There was no lack of harsh words in the curses. She had never heard so many dirty words in her life. She was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. Her hatred towards Dean had reached an unprecedented level. "Master, Mississippi." The butler led the servants to greet them. George got off the carriage and walked into the castle. "What happened today?" "I heard from Bullet yesterday that there was no trouble except for the withdrawal of some shareholders." "What happened today?" The butler's face turned ugly as he whispered, "Master, yesterday the New World Consortium arranged a newspaper to interview Master Dean. Who would have thought that Master Dean would say that he was disappointed with the consortium in the war?" The crutches stopped. George Mel stopped as well. The butler's heart was trembling as he looked at him. He had been in the Mel family for many years, but he had never seen George show such an angry expression. He was disappointed? Just because he was disappointed? George's arm, which was holding the crutch, trembled slightly. His originally gloomy expression was completely out of control. He felt that his chest was about to explode. When he was young, he was all-powerful. Although he was old now, who wouldn't be respectful and polite to him? But now, because of the words "disappointed" of a 16-year-old boy, he was cursed for several streets? What a bully! Sarah's face was full of anger. "What do you mean by disappointed with a consortium?" "Now that our Mel family has been imprisoned by the military for so many days, even a fool would know that we are the consortium he was referring to." "Bastard! Damn bastard!" She wanted to curse, but she didn't know what to say. Chapter 406. "Master, they are out of prison," Crone respectfully reported. Dean put down the newspaper and smiled. "Did anything happen on the road?" "No," Crone whispered. "Old Feline hired some people to insult them along the road according to your instructions. But they didn't respond." Dean faintly smiled. "It's decent to be able to hold back." "Master, what should we do next?" Crone whispered. "It's time to see their performance." Dean indifferently said, "I'll write a letter. Ask Noyce to personally deliver it to the temple." I'll give a public lecture about the principles of gas faction in 10 days. I'll accept 8 students. Crone replied, yes. The second thing is that you inform old Feline to buy a guard of the Mel family. No matter how much money he has to spend, he has to come see me. Remember to buy the strongest one, Duddian whispered. In addition, tell the patriarch that if the Melon Consortium uses a lot of money to pull the other shareholders back to the consortium, then tell them in advance that I want to accept students. If the shareholders insist on going back, then let them go. Don't hold them back. Crone bowed his head. Yes. Skagen was stunned as he read the letter presented by the servant who claimed to be Dean. He put away the letter and ordered people to send the servant away. Then he looked at his student, immediately informed the temple that Master Dean will give a public lecture about gas faction in 10 days. Moreover, he will select students with potential. This is a master's lecture, so it must be on the headlines of the temple for 3 consecutive issues. The student was surprised as he heard Dean's words. He turned around and ran away in excitement. In the past few days, the temple was talking about the role of the gas faction. There were many speculations about the role of the gas faction. Although there were masters who had come out to explain, but they didn't know much about it. It would be much easier to understand if the creator of the system personally came out to explain. The news spread like wildfire. The journals haven't been published yet, but the consortiums have been informed of the news. The entire commercial district was in a sensation. They immediately sent people to inquire about the specific arrangements of the lecture, as well as Dean's conditions for accepting students and so on. Only the lower-level nobles and ordinary civilians were still immersed in the pain of the destruction of their homes, the death of their relatives and friends, or the loss of their property. Father, the Bethel family, the Kunka family, and the Ram family are willing to return to the consortium. Mark looked a little tired, but the price is 3 times as much as before. Each person wants 8% of his shares. The rest of the families haven't responded yet. Milan family wants 30% of his shares. Rudolph's servants told me that Rudolph is ready to withdraw from the consortium. George was sitting on a big chair with a cane in his hand. His silver hair was like frost. His eyes were sharp as he said in a cold voice, "A group of rebellious people. 3 times is 3 times. Promise them. After we get through this crisis, we will marginalize them. The Milan family and Rudolph are wearing the same pants." Humph. 30% of his shares. How can they say it? Tell the Milan family that the maximum is 20%. The number of shares in our hands can't be less than 51%. Otherwise, the kid doesn't need to do anything. We will be destroyed. Mark frowned. Father, what should we do if Rudolph withdraws? You go and talk to him. George's face was gloomy. His father and I jointly founded the Melon Consortium. How can he withdraw from it? I'm afraid that his father will die in peace if he hears about it. Mark sighed. All right, but Rudolph is stubborn. He deliberately withdrew his investment. I'm afraid that a few words won't change his mind. In my opinion, we have to find a way to deal with the kid first. Otherwise, the pressure on the others will be too great. It will be bad for us. Now is a sensitive period. The kid will be on guard against us. We have to think of another way to deal with him. George said in a cold voice, Tell Rudolph that if he doesn't withdraw his investment, then the Melon family will be the leader of the Melon Consortium in the future. Mark was startled. He thought for a moment and nodded. Okay. He was about to turn away when a golden feather messenger crow flew in from the window. It was a messenger crow that was specially raised by the temple. It was a rare breed and was considered to be of noble lineage. George was startled. He raised his hand, and the messenger crow landed on his arm. He opened the letter on the crow's leg, shook it open, and read it. His face suddenly changed, and he tore the letter into pieces. Because his action was too big, the crow on his arm flapped its wings and flew out of the window, dropping 2 pale golden feathers. Mark's heart sank. Father, what's the matter? Damn little bastard. George clenched his fists. His eyes were full of anger. He will hold a public lecture in 10 days. Moreover, he is ready to accept students. Damn bastard. He announced the news at this time. It is obvious that he is giving the opportunity to other nobles to fight over him. This little bastard is too vicious. Mark's face turned gloomy. Most of the architects who had potential in the temple had aristocrats or rich people to rely on. After all, the cost of an architect was enormous. If there was no one to provide financial support, then the efficiency of the research would be extremely low. Now that Dean had announced the news, it was tantamount to throwing out a tempting fruit. Everyone was eager to become the youngest student of a legendary master in history. As a result, these people were bound to wash their relationship with the Melon Consortium and isolate them. We have underestimated him in the past. Mark took a deep breath and clenched his fists. There was a trace of regret in his heart. If he knew that this would happen, then he wouldn't have given such a dangerous person to his daughter. He should have personally eliminated him. There was silence in the room. It was depressing and silent. Only the heavy breathing of both of them could be heard. George's chest went up and down as he gradually restrained his anger. He was about to open his mouth when there was a knock on the door. Anger flashed in his eyes as he said in a low and hoarse voice, "Come in." The door was opened, and the butler came in. There was a middle-aged man in black armor behind him. Mark frowned as he saw the middle-aged man. "Ron, what's the matter?" The middle-aged man named Ron nodded. "Master, Mister, the New World Consortium has sent someone to find me." "Huh?" George's eyes flashed with a cold light. "What did you say?" The butler who was next to him was shocked. He subconsciously took 2 steps back as he looked at the middle-aged man. Ron calmly replied, "Master, the New World Consortium has sent someone to find me. They gave me a huge sum of money, 500,000 gold coins. They want to bribe me. They want me to betray the Mel family. They wanted to go to Master Dean and listen to his instructions." George coldly stared at him, narrowing his eyes. 500,000 gold coins, what a big sum. "You've come here to say this. Do you not agree?" "Yes, I will never betray the Mel family." Ron replied, "How can I believe you?" George stared at him. Ron looked at him and turned to look at Mark. "Mister, you have saved my life. I vow to do my best to defend the Mel family. Do you believe me?" Chapter 407. George stared at him and slowly nodded. "Since you said so, then I will leave this matter to you." "Yes." Mark nodded and looked at Ron. "Have you responded to the secret bribe?" Ron Cohen shook his head and said, "There's no response yet. As soon as I found out about this, I came to report to Master and Mister." "Very good." Mark nodded and sneered. "This kid used his identity as a master to isolate our Melon Consortium. He wants to bribe our commanders. His purpose is nothing more than a duel with his knights. Let's go with his plan. You should agree to it first." Ron was startled. "Master, do you mean that I will pretend to be bribed and pass the information to you?" "Yes," Mark said, "but you have to act well. Don't let them see through you." "I will." Ron nodded. Mark said, "All right, you go first." "All right." Ron Cohen accepted the order and left. After he left, George slowly opened his mouth and said, "Can we trust him? If he's already been bribed, then using this to exchange for a trust, wouldn't it be?" Mark slightly shook his head. "Father, I don't believe in other people, but he is the one I trust the most in addition to the shadow. Not to mention 500,000 gold coins. Even 5 million gold coins wouldn't be enough. He doesn't care about money." George stared at him. "This is a critical moment. We can't afford to lose. We can't afford to make any mistakes." "No, I'm sure of it." Mark looked at him seriously. "It doesn't matter, even if Father says it doesn't matter. We can try again. I don't believe that we can't win against that kid." George nodded slightly and said, "That's good. I want to see what that kid wants him to do. Could it be that he wants to assassinate us?" "If that's the case, then it's good." Mark said, "But this matter reminds us. Besides Ron, I don't know if the other attendants have been bribed. It seems that we have to reorganize them." "Yes." George nodded. "Master." Crone ran into duty and study. "Ryan family has sent news that they have bought the Knight Commander of the Mel family. They want to ask you what they want him to do." Dean slowly put down the book. "Nothing. Let him come and see me. Tell him that I have something to discuss with him." "All right." Crone went out to reply. "Sir, they sent me a message to meet Master due directly." Ron handed the note to Mark. The note was taken from a piece of bread. It still had the fragrance of the bread on it. Mark looked at it and narrowed his eyes. It seems that he is afraid of being exposed, so he left some evidence. He wants you to go directly to him. He must have something important to discuss with you. But it is also possible that he wants to test your loyalty. He pondered for a moment, then nodded. All right, you go. It is best to kill him if there is a suitable opportunity. Everything will be over in that way. Yes. Ron Cohen's answer was very decisive. Although he knew what the consequences would be if he killed Dean, but he still agreed without hesitation. Mark looked at him and patted his shoulder. But it's the first time he sees you. He'll be wary of you. Don't act rashly if the time isn't right. There will be opportunities in the future as long as you gain his trust. Understand? Got it. Lang Cohen lowered his head. All right, go. The meeting time was set for the evening. Dean asked the kitchen to have dinner before the night fell. He let Crone and Nicholas eat first. After dinner, he asked Crone to call Sergei. He threw a stack of gold notes to the burly man. Tonight you are going to the most famous Moulin Rouge to play. Remember that you are not allowed to come back until the money is spent. Sergei was yawning, but his eyes widened as he heard Dean's words. Master, what are you doing? Sympathize with my subordinates. Dean indifferently replied. Sergei felt that the sun had risen from the west. Although it was inconceivable, he quickly picked up the gold notes from the table and stuffed them into his pants. He smiled. In that case, I won't be polite. I guarantee that you will spend it all. Remember to go to the best Moulin Rouge. Dean indifferently said. If you don't have a good time, then I'll destroy your foundation. Sergei felt a chill in his crotch. His legs were slightly clamped. He smiled bitterly. Young master, what do you want to do? Just tell me. I'll cooperate with you. You're making me feel a little uneasy. Go. Dean waved his hand as he was too lazy to say more. Sergei helplessly said, Then I'm really going to play? Crone whispered to Dean after Sergei left. Master, don't you have an appointment with the Knight Commander of the Mel family to discuss things? Don't you trust Sergei? Those who I don't trust are dead. Dean said, Those who are in front of me are trustworthy. Go and prepare to welcome them. Crone was full of doubts, but he still turned and left. The night was getting darker. Ron Cohen disguised himself as an ordinary person and rode an ordinary horse to the front of the ancient castle. Even though his clothes were extremely ordinary, his upright posture and the somber aura he exuded made it hard for others to ignore him. Ron dismounted from the horse and covered his eyes with his hood. He came to the front of the castle. Who is it? Noyce, who was guarding the door, shouted. In fact, he had a guess in his heart when he saw the murderous aura of the man. Full moon. Ron Cohen said the prearranged secret code. Noyce nodded and pushed the door. Please come in. Ron Cohen pulled his hood down a little and ducked in. Ron had often heard rumors about this young genius in the Mel family. It was the first time that he came to the castle. The first impression he had when he entered the hall was that the place was shabby. The lights were dim and the hall was plain. However, his gaze immediately fell on the figure sitting on the sofa in the middle of the hall. Just like the rumors said, he was handsome, tall, and at the same time, just like what the noble ladies said, he was well-mannered and had a refined temperament. However, as a person who had killed countless enemies in the battlefield, he sensitively sensed a deeply hidden aura from this person. It was extremely dark and thick, like a mass of viscous fog. Dean looked at the Knight Commander and smiled. Ron Cohen lifted his hood and said, That's me. Are you Master Dean? Yes, Dean said. It's our first meeting, so I can't trust you. Can I check your body? No one is allowed to carry weapons here. Ron nodded, took out a dagger from his bosom, and said, I only have this weapon. It's for self-defense. With that said, he bent down and put on the ground. There was a smile on Dean's face. Very good. Knight Ron is very honest and worthy of being a golden knight of the Knight's Hall. However, I'm afraid of death, so I'll have to check again. I hope you don't mind. Ron nodded. It's okay. Dean snapped his fingers. A quiet girl who was waiting next to Ron nodded. She reached out to touch Ron's shoulder to check if there was any place to hide things. Ron frowned as he saw that the girl wasn't dressed like a maid. There was a trace of doubt in his heart, but he didn't say anything. He didn't know anything about the master's daily life. He raised his arm and let the girl touch his chest. Suddenly, puff, He felt a sharp pain in his chest. Ron's pupils shrank. He hurriedly shook his arms and used a huge force to hit the girl behind him. However, the girl was as soft as a feather. She moved back like a soft breeze. Ron looked down and saw a small needle piercing his clothes. His face turned ugly as he looked at Dean, who was sitting on the sofa. He covered the place where the needle had pierced. He didn't want the poison to spread to other parts of his body. He gritted his teeth and looked at Dean. "Master, why?" Dean gently blew on the coffee. "Don't you know that your only use is to die here?" Chapter 408. The smile on Dean's face disappeared as he looked at the angry man. He threw the cup of hot coffee in his hand and kicked the table in front of him. The scalding hot water splashed on Ron's face. However, the pain was nothing compared to the anger in his heart. He kicked the table and broke it. He roared as he approached Dean and stabbed him with the dagger. Whoosh! At this time, a breeze came from behind. It was Gwyneth. She was holding a sword and was chasing after Dean. Ron didn't care as he went straight towards Dean. He would rather give up his life to take away Dean's life. Dean quietly looked at Ron's angry face. He suddenly smiled as he raised his hand and grabbed Ron's wrist. Ron's anger was abruptly stopped. Ron Cohen's pupils dilated as he looked at the youth in disbelief. The tremendous force that came from his wrist made him so shocked that he could not speak. "I'm sorry, but you can't kill me," Dean said with a smile. At the same time, he pulled Ron's hand that was holding the dagger to his chest. The dagger cut the left side of his chest. Puff! Ron's clothes were cut, and the tip of the dagger made a cut on his skin. Ron stared blankly. Before he could react, a sharp whistling sound came from behind him. The next moment, he only felt that his body was suddenly pulled by Dean, and he was not under his own control. The power that came from the boy was so great that it made him feel terrified. Then he saw his body turn around, facing the back. The girl who had previously searched his body was holding a sword, and her pretty face was as cold as frost. She did not have the temperament that a servant should have. Puff! The sword pierced through his heart. Blood gushed out of Ron Cohen's throat. He wanted to swallow it, but the blood rushed up his throat too quickly. In the end, he didn't have the strength to swallow it. He suddenly spat it out, and blood splattered all over the ground, staining the girl in front of him. His consciousness blurred. Runcorn fell to the ground, dead. Dean smiled and retracted his hand. He called Crone. "Bring me my first aid kit. Also inform the magistrate that there is an assassination attempt." Crone and Nicotine, who were already frightened, immediately agreed and ran away. "Thanks for your hard work," Dean said to Gwyneth as he sat down on the sofa that was pushed into the hall. He bandaged himself and said to Gwyneth. Gwyneth was still holding the sword as she stood in front of the corpse. She didn't care about the blood splashing on her face and body. She silently looked at the teenager. "This is what I should do." Gwyneth's fingers gently rubbed the hilt of the sword as she spoke. She guessed that if Sergei was here, then he would be shocked. Although she and Sergei expected Dean to remove the steel nails because he wasn't afraid of their sneak attack, but they had seen with their own eyes that the teenager's strength was much higher than theirs. Ron Cohen's physique wasn't inferior to his senior hunters. In fact, he was even stronger than most senior hunters. However, he was like a weak child in front of Yishiwan. He was easily subdued. Gwyneth couldn't help but think of the legendary monster's body outside the giant wall. Her mood was a bit complicated. A hunter with legendary magic marks was sitting in front of her. She lived in the inner wall, so she knew how great the potential of a person with legendary magic marks was. Moreover, the other party was a master of the invention. He had enough resources to cultivate himself and set foot on the highest peak. After a moment, the magistrate arrived. 2 teams of knights of the magistrate and 2 deacons of the magistrate came in a hurry in the dark. It showed how much importance they attached to Dean's matter. As soon as they entered the hall, the 2 deacons saw Dean sitting on the sofa next to the hall. Dean's chest was bandaged with gauze. The girl was silently standing next to him with a sword in her hand. There was also a corpse on the ground and 2 stewards who were silent next to him. There was dead silence in the hall. The 2 deacons of the magistrate were surprised. Their eyes stayed on the corpse for a moment. They came to the front of Dean. "Master, Is this the murderer who tried to assassinate you? Dean nodded. Please help me find out the identity of this person. Why did he want to assassinate me? Leave it to us. Rose took a deep breath. Master, are you okay? Do you want me to call someone to check your body? Dean shook his head. It's just a scratch. I'm fine. Rose saw that the gauze was wrapped with a faint red color. There was a very long diagonal scar. Rose was scared. Master, I'll send someone to check. Please describe the assassination. Duddian nodded. The man said that he had something to ask of me, so I asked the attendant to let him in. But he didn't say a few words and suddenly attacked me. Fortunately, I had her to protect me. Plus, I'm a knight, so I was able to avoid a fatal blow. Rose nodded and asked the assistant to write down the details. Rose looked at Dean. Master, we have to investigate the scene. Please, I'll go upstairs to rest. Dean said. Okay. Rose's nodded. Take care. Dean raised his hand and slowly went upstairs with Nicotine's help. The next day, New World News once again published a shocking news. Master of Invention and City Defense hero Dean was assassinated last night. He almost lost his life. The shocking title attracted countless people to buy the newspaper. New World News once again won the first place in newspaper sales. Mel family. George woke up from his bed. The maid helped him to change into soft home clothes. He washed his face and brushed his teeth. He went to the dining room with the help of the maid. The newspaper and breakfast were ready on the table. He sat down and took a sip of the warm milk to moisten his throat. Then he put on his reading glasses, picked up the newspaper, shook it, and quietly read it. Soon, he finished reading the newspaper and moved on to the next one. After reading 2 copies in a row, he got the 3rd copy. Master of Divinity, the hero of the city, Dean was assassinated last night and almost lost his life. George's eyes swept over the title. His fingers that were holding the newspaper slightly trembled. His face turned red as he spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood splashed into the glass of milk and his breakfast plate. Master. Chapter 409. Knock. There was a hurried knock on the door. Mark was drowsy from exhaustion when he heard this sound. His brain was in pain. He didn't have the strength to open his eyelids. He instinctively frowned. Last night, he drank a lot of wine in order to win over several big families. Although he drank some sobriety medicine afterwards, he was still a bit uncomfortable. At the moment he heard this sound, his heart was unspeakably irritated. He raised his hand to pinch the bridge of his nose and sighed softly. He knew that something must have happened for someone to knock on the door so urgently. Sitting up from the bed, he raised his hand slightly. The maid next to him handed him a warm and wet towel. He wiped his face and let out a sigh of relief. Is it Saya? Come in. The maid opened the door and Sarah rushed in. She was startled as she saw her tired father sitting on the bed. There was a trace of guilt in her heart, but she quickly said, Father, something big has happened. Speak slowly. Mark's face sank as he stood up. The maid immediately came forward to help him put on his clothes. Sarah Mel quickly handed the newspaper in her hand and said, Father, look. Mark took the newspaper and swept it. He saw the eye-catching title. His tired face froze as if he was struck by lightning. Sarah didn't expect her calm father to react like this. She was scared and nervous as she said, Father, did you send someone to do this? If not, with that kid's sinister personality, do you think he'll smear this matter on us? Mark gradually recovered. Commander Ron, tell him to come and see me. Commander Runcorn? Sarah was at a loss. She suddenly thought of something and her face changed. Father, it shouldn't be. Mark rudely interrupted her. I'm asking you if he's here. I'll go and ask the butler. Sarah was shocked. Her father had never been so fierce to her since she was a child. Even when she made a mistake and messed up the family's business worth 100,000 gold coins, he didn't say half a word to her. He even comforted her. But she also realized the seriousness of the matter. She immediately turned around and ran out. After a moment, Sarah returned with a pale face. Father, Commander Ron isn't here. Mark had just changed his clothes. His body shook as he heard this. He almost fainted. Father, Could it be that this was really done by Commander Ron Cohen? Sarah Mell's lips slightly trembled. Why? Did you send him? If it's really him, then the newspaper said that the assassin failed and was killed by his squire. Sooner or later, the investigation will lead to us. Mark stood in the same place. His mind was buzzing. He couldn't hear what his daughter was saying. Boundless despair shrouded his heart. He had fallen many times in his life, but he had never suffered such a huge setback. Did Ron betray me? No, he won't betray me. If he was bought, then I would lose my life. What's the use of money? Mark gradually recovered from his chaotic thoughts. His mind became clearer and clearer. He finally understood what was going on. The thief was crying thief. It was such a simple method, but he fell into it. His fists were clenched so tightly that they trembled slightly due to excessive force. His nails dug deep into his palms without him even realizing it. Although he had considered this point when he allowed Ron to go, but he didn't think about it carefully. After all, with Ron's strength, there weren't many people in the outer wall who could stop him. There were even fewer people who wanted to assassinate him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to be the commander of the Knights and protect the Mell family for so many years. Moreover, he knew the strength of Dean's attendants. Only 2 of them were a threat to Ron. Both of them were bailed out from Thornflower Prison by Dean. Ron should be able to protect himself and retreat even if he couldn't beat them. But he didn't expect that he would die in Dean's castle. The only explanation was that the other side had set up an ambush from the beginning and was waiting for him to come to them. The so-called bribe was just a cover. He also tried to take this opportunity to get rid of Dean. Even if he couldn't get rid of Dean, he could take this opportunity to get important information from Dean's mouth and then counterattack. Who would have thought that it would be a dead move? He was directly checkmated by Dean. Father! Father! Sarah cried out as she saw Mark in a trance. Mark took a deep breath. Don't tell your grandfather about this. He can't bear this blow. Call Mell and Myers and tell everyone to come over. Prepare for a family meeting and transfer the funds. Be sure to be quick. Sarah was shocked. Father, what did you say? Transfer the funds? Are you going to? Yes, the Mell family is finished. Mark's eyes were full of killing intent. But we won't perish. One day we will rise again. Now we have to minimize the losses. Sarah Mell felt as if she had been struck by lightning. In her mind, everyone in the commercial district knew about the Mell family. They were like the aristocracy of the aristocracy. They were high up in the sky, but now they were finished. The Mell family that had stood at the top for decades was going to be overshadowed in one night. Father. Sarah looked at Mark. It's just an assassination. Let's give the magistrates some money. We can give them 10 times more money so that they will turn a blind eye to it. If we withdraw our money, then it will be very difficult for us to make a comeback in the future. I don't believe that he is just a master. Even if we find out that the murderer is Commander Ron Cohen, what can we do about it? We just have to say that Commander Ron did it himself. What does it have to do with us? Mark frowned. Nonsense. A loss is a loss. We have underestimated the enemy. We have let him exploit the loopholes again and again. There is no way to recover with money. Assassinating a master will alarm the Holy Church. According to the agreement between the magistrate and the Holy Church, they have the right to send people to participate in the magistrate's investigation. The Light Church is very protective of their own people. They will definitely listen to that brat's instructions and put the blame on us. There's no hope anymore. Our only hope now is to rise again. But, Sarah's heart was in pain. She couldn't accept such a blow. She wanted to act like an ordinary noble lady of the same age. However, there were some words that she couldn't say. She just couldn't accept such a cruel reality. She couldn't bear it. Go! Mark angrily rebuked. Sarah bit her lips. Tears flowed out from her sparkling crystal-like eyes and fell down her beautiful cheeks. She wiped her tears, covered her mouth, and turned around to run out. Second floor, study room. The words are wrong. Copy them 100 times. Dean threw the small book in front of the boy. The boy was Gabriel. Not only can you read, but also write. Knowledge is more useful than a sword. Do you know? Gabriel bowed his head. I understand, young master. Dean nodded. Go. Gabriel took his little book and turned to leave. Behind him, A small house made of countless small blocks was placed on the table. The little girl, Artemis, lay on the table, carefully piling up the roof with her hands. Her green hair set off her little face, making her look as cute as a porcelain doll. Dean got up and sat down at the desk. "What is this?" Artemis was a little timid before him. She shrank back and said, "It's a house." "Do you like such a house?" "I like it." Dean smiled. He stretched out his finger and flicked it at the bottom of the house. A block flew out and pushed the blocks next to it to move. The tall house collapsed in an instant and became a table of scattered blocks. Artemis was stunned. She looked at the scattered blocks on the table and then looked at Dean. Her lips flattened and her eyes turned red. It seemed that she wanted to cry, but she didn't dare to do so. Last time she cried, and her brother was punished to swing his sword 3,000 times. His hands were so sore that he couldn't even hold the knife. "It seems that the house you built isn't strong enough," Dean said. Artemis flattened her mouth as tears welled up in her eyes. "Let's do it again." Dean smiled. "Don't be angry. There will be punishment if the house isn't a mess." Chapter 410. Master Dean, the identity of the assassin has been investigated. In the hall, Deacon Ross reported to the teenager who was sitting on the sofa. His attitude was polite, and there was even a trace of humility in it. In terms of status, Deacon and Magistrate was barely equal to Senior Architect. He had to be polite in front of Master, not to mention a master like Dean who was destined to have an extraordinary future and unlimited potential. Dean nodded. He saw Rose's aura. "Deacon, please speak." "I'll listen." Rosses was flattered. He nodded and said, "All right, Master. This assassin is called Ron Cohen. He was born in a commoner's family. At the age of 13, he caught the eye of Knight Veniamin of the Hall of Knights and was accepted as a student. Later, under Knight Veniamin's guidance, he gradually rose to prominence. At the age of 28, he successfully passed the Golden Knight test and became an outstanding Golden Knight. Shortly after becoming a Golden Knight, Ron Cohen declined all invitations and took the initiative to join the Mel family. Since then, he has served as the commander of the Mel family. Ross looked at Dean. He had heard about the conflict between Dean and Mel family. It was easy for him to find out the truth as long as he wanted to investigate. Dean's calm expression sank. "Deacon, do you mean that the Mel family sent someone to assassinate me?" Rose smiled. "Master, this is only a preliminary investigation. We haven't found out whether Mel family is behind this or he came here on his own." Rose's voice couldn't help but weaken as he said this. Why would Knight Commander take the risk to assassinate a master if there was no instruction? "Haven't found out?" Dean turned to look at him. "Deacon, how long do you think it will take to find out?" Ross could feel the anger in Dean's words. He couldn't afford to offend either of them. He reluctantly smiled. "Master, don't worry. We will take the time to investigate and let the Mel family give you a reply as soon as possible. If they're the mastermind, then we will give you an explanation. Moreover, our people have gone to the Mel family to investigate." Dean nodded. There was still a bit of anger on his face, but he didn't say anything. "Investigate?" At this moment, a clear voice came from outside the hall. Dean and Rose saw a middle-aged man in silver armor enter the room. The arrogance on his face converged as he saw Dean, Holy Church's keeper, Redmayne. "Greetings, Master Dean. Please forgive me for taking the liberty to visit." What was supposed to come had finally come. There was a touch of smile on Dean's face. "Hello, I didn't greet you. I hope you can forgive me." "Master, you're too polite." Redmayne smiled. "We have been ordered to cooperate with the magistrate to investigate the assassination case. We will give Master a satisfactory answer. Most of the people who dare to attack Master are related to the Dark Cult. I will personally send someone to Mel family to investigate. Master, please be patient." Dean nodded. "Thanks for the trouble." Rose's face slightly changed. He sighed in his heart. He knew that the Mel family was finished. Assassinating a master of the Temple of Elements established by the Holy Church would only result in them being labeled as a cult. This wasn't something that the Mel family could bear, especially in the current situation where they had a bad reputation and no one could help them. They couldn't bear it. Deacon Rose, It's a pleasure to cooperate with you. Redmayne smiled and reached out his hand. Rosaith reached out and took it. He nodded and said nothing. What did you say? Sarah looked at her brother in shock. There was a trace of fear in her eyes as she said, You want to investigate us as a cult? Melk sighed. His handsome face that had once charmed countless rich girls was now full of sadness. Based on my understanding as a Knight of Light, once a senior member of the Holy Church is assassinated, they will definitely conduct a strict investigation and send out the lawkeeper. This has already been agreed with the magistrate. The magistrate has no right to organize the investigation. Once the lawkeeper defines the assassination as a cult activity, they will have the right to investigate and judge. Once the Radiant Church is in control, given their style of doing things, they will most likely conduct a strict investigation. They might even use some special methods. Unless we are really innocent and have never had any contact with the Dark Church. Once we do, they will definitely find out. There is no way to escape this. Everyone's face turned ugly as they heard Melk's words. The Mel family was a powerful family in the commercial district. They had many industries under their command. They had to deal with people from all walks of life. Naturally, they couldn't avoid the Dark Church. Even the notorious alchemists of the Dark Church didn't mean anything to them. This was the unspoken rule and tacit agreement between the nobles. No noble could say that they were innocent. If the investigation was strict, it would be inevitable to find out many things that had been covered up. Sarah bit her lips and clenched her slender fingers. We must not let the Keeper get involved in the investigation. If they investigate one by one, then they will definitely find out that our family has been in contact with the Dark Church. We might even have some business cooperation. If it is proven, then the crime will be too heavy. Not only will we be deprived of all our assets, but we may not even be able to keep our noble status. Everyone looked at each other. How could they not be aware of this? However, what could they do to stop the Keeper of the Order? At this time, the crowd suddenly parted. Mark slowly walked towards them. He stood on the steps and looked around at everyone. His cheeks were a bit depressed, but he still maintained an indifferent and dignified appearance. Someone must take responsibility for this matter. I will take responsibility when the Keeper of the Holy Church comes to investigate. This assassination is purely a business competition. In this case, there will only be some fines. Now you should sell your properties as soon as possible. You should transfer your assets and funds out of the family. Everyone was stunned. Sarah looked at her father. Tears fell from her eyes. There was a tearing pain in her heart. She suddenly regretted her willfulness and self-righteousness. If she could have killed that boy earlier, then there wouldn't have been any problems. But now the entire family had been forced into such a sorry state by a single person. Regret. Pain. Regret. She had never regretted something like this. Unfortunately, time wouldn't reverse for her. Suddenly, a cough came from behind Mark. Mark was startled. He turned his head and saw his father being supported by the butler. They hadn't seen each other for half a day. Everyone looked at the old man with shocked expressions on their faces. George used to be strong and energetic, but now he looked like an old man. His back was stooped. The wrinkles on his face were unprecedentedly deep and old. He was wearing a fur coat, which made him look even thinner. Father! Mark hurriedly came forward. George looked at him and sighed. He reached out and patted the back of Dudian's hand. Child, do you remember what I told you before? If you're knocked down by the enemy's fist, then use your sword to stab back. The future of the family is in your hands. Mark's complexion changed. Father, this is my negligence. It's my fault. I will bear the responsibility. I'm old. George quietly looked at him. His eyes swept across the audience and saw the faces of the younger generation. He smiled and said, When people get old, it's time to die. Moreover, this small matter won't kill me. You are all my good children. You have to work harder in the future, understand? Chapter 411. Is the fireplace on fire? Dean tightened the blanket and put his hands into the sweater. He asked Crone, who was next to him. Crone saw that Dudian was shivering in the cold. He replied, Master, the fireplace is burning. Would you like to sit by the fireplace? Dean frowned but silently nodded. He got up and went to the fireplace next to the sofa. Crone took the animal fur blanket and patted it on the sofa. Dean sat down after the blanket was laid out. The fire in the fireplace crackled, and the warm light shone on his face, but he still felt that his whole body was bone-chilling cold, and he couldn't help but feel a little worried. Black snowflakes were falling from the sky outside the window. The snowflakes were mixed with radiation particles. The speed of the snowflakes was relatively fast as they hit the ground and the window. The door was pushed open. Artemis timidly came in. She looked at Crone. "Master, did you call me?" Although she was only 4 or 5 years old, the hardships of childhood made her more sensible than other children of the same age. Coupled with Dean's teaching these days, she also learned to call Dean like other people in the castle. Dean nodded and beckoned her to come over. Artemis was nervous as she slowly came in front of Dean. Dean reached out and touched her green hair. He had never seen such a hair color in the outer wall. Civilians had brown or black hair, while nobles had blonde or pale gold hair. Such a unique hair color was extremely rare. He whispered, "Have you finished today's homework?" "I'm done," Artemis answered honestly, her voice crisp and tender. Dean nodded and sat her on his lap. "What story do you want to listen to today?" Artemis blinked her bright eyes and felt a little relieved. She knew that this big brother was the most gentle when he was telling a story. He would never get angry, but he seemed to be a different person when he was telling a story. She tilted her head and thought for a while. "I still want to hear the story of the ugly duckling from last time." Dean smiled. "I have finished the story of the ugly duckling. Today I will tell you the story of Snow White. Do you want to hear it?" "Snow White?" Artemis blinked. Wasn't the snow black? How could there be white snow? Crone was quietly waiting next to Dudian, but his ears were pricked up. He liked the stories told by Dudian and admired him. Dudian was a friend of the same age, but he knew more than him. "The snow is white." Dean smiled. "In a distant place where the snow is white." The story began in that place. There was a... Dudian's soft voice echoed in the room as the black snow fell on the window. The firewood in the fireplace cracked. Time passed unknowingly. Artemis sat in Dean's arms and listened obediently. She didn't interrupt Dean's words like other little girls who would interrupt Dean's words to ask questions. When the story was finished, Crone was still immersed in it and had not come back to his senses. Artemis's eyes lit up. "The 7 dwarves are so pitiful." Dean smiled but didn't speak. He gently put her back on the ground. "Go and practice your swordsmanship." Artemis came to her senses. Knowing that this was the end of her gentleness, she nodded and said, "I'm going, young master." With that, she left the study. Crone quietly watched her leave. "Master, your time is so precious. Why are you wasting time by telling her these stories?" "Blindly exercising and learning. There is no warmth. Only monsters will be cultivated." Dean's expression was flat. People who have fairy tales in their heart will have persistence. When the fairy tales are shattered, it is time to break the cocoon and become a butterfly. Crone was startled. He was at a loss. Dean sighed as he looked at the black snow that had accumulated on the window lattice. There was a trace of darkness in his eyes. Knock. A sound came from outside the door. "Come in." Nicholas pushed the door and respectfully said, "Master, the Knight's Hall has sent someone to summon you." Dean's eyes flashed slightly. He nodded, lifted the warm blanket on his body, put down the book, and got up to leave the fireplace. After leaving the room, the air seemed to be colder. His pores shrank slightly, and he shivered slightly. But he didn't want to let others see that he was shivering. He could only purse his lips, tense his body, and unconsciously look indifferent. He went downstairs. Dean saw a knight in the hall. He was about 30 years old. He was wearing a golden knight's armor. He had an imposing appearance and thick eyebrows. The man said after seeing Dean, "I'm Alva. Greetings, Master Dean." Dean nodded. "I've been waiting for a long time. Please sit down." "No, I'm here to deliver a letter." "This is your letter." Alva respectfully handed over a piece of paper. Dean took a look and nodded. "No problem. I'll go with you." Alva was overjoyed. "All right." Dean ordered Crone to prepare the horses. He was about to go out when a team of people came from the distance. Redmayne was leading the team. He saluted Dean and nodded to Alva. "Master, Mel family's patriarch George has admitted that he sent people to assassinate you." He has been arrested and imprisoned in the military. He has been sentenced to life imprisonment. Dean's eyes lit up. What is the reason for the assassination? Redmayne hesitated. According to the magistrate's investigation, it should be because of business competition. If you die, then New World Consortium won't be able to rely on you and suppress the Melon Consortium. So, Dean nodded. I know. Thank you for your hard work. Of course, it's snowing outside. Grandmaster, where are you going? Redmayne asked as he looked at Alva. He had a guess in his mind. Alva answered for Dean. Master is going to receive a Knight Medal. Redmayne looked at Dean in admiration. Master is not only great in the field of divinity, but also has the strength of a knight. I really admire you. Dean said goodbye to Redmayne and rode away with Alva. They rode for more than an hour before arriving at the Knight's Hall. Master, please. Alva led the way. Dean kept up with him. The Knight's Hall was as majestic as ever. It was like a huge square with a high dome. The walls were embedded with wall lamps and crystals. It was extremely luxurious and simple. It didn't have the vulgarity of gold and jade, but exuded nobility and sacredness. This is the sealed platform. Alva led Dean to a hall. There was a huge circular platform in the middle of the hall. Outside the circular platform was a circle of seats. Currently, there were 12 figures sitting around it. All of them were wearing knight armor and had knight medals on them. Behind these 12 figures, there were 3 figures sitting on a higher level of seats. They were 2 golden knights, and the one in the middle was an old man wearing bright golden armor. He had an extremely thick white beard. Dean, please come to the platform, the white-bearded old man said. His majestic voice spread throughout the hall. Dean came to the center of the round platform along the narrow aisle. The white-bearded old man deeply looked at Dean. I swear, we swear. The 12 knights around him shouted in unison. Humble, courteous, upright. The white-bearded old man recited loudly. Every time he recited sentence, the 12 knights around him would recite a sentence as well. The majestic code of chivalry reverberated in the hall, causing the walls to echo loudly. After a moment, the white-bearded old man finished reciting. He pulled out his sword, stood up from his seat, and walked down the stairs step by step. He came to Dean and said, Are you willing to accept the knight's mission? Dean knelt on one knee, bowed his head, and said, I'm willing to accept. The white-bearded old man pressed the sword on his shoulder and said, Swear. Dean took a deep breath. With a solemn expression, he sonorously swore, I, Dean, swear that I will follow the knight's code of conduct all my life. Humility, integrity, compassion, heroism, justice, sacrifice, glory, soul. The knight's code is my code. I swear I will treat the weak well. Enslave them. I swear I will bravely fight against the ruthlessness of the asterisk. I swear I will fight against all wrong. Reflection. I swear I will fight for the unarmed. Use. I swear I will help anyone who asks me for help. Valuable. I swear I will not hurt any woman, will not provoke me. I swear I will help my brother knight. Bribe. I swear I will be sincere to my friends. Surface. I swear I will love until death. The oath echoed in the hall. After a moment, the oath ended. The white-bearded old man took back his sword and stretched out his hand. Dean took his hand and stood up. It wasn't a sign of help, but a symbol of inheritance. At this time, 2 golden knights came over with a new set of golden knight's armor and a golden knight's sword. They handed over to Dean. The white-bearded old man took out a knight's medal from his hand. It wasn't a golden knight's medal, but a bright gold one. The edge of the medal was inlaid with crystal diamonds. It was the highest level crystal knight medal of the Knight's Hall. Crystal Knight was the highest glory of a knight. It symbolized flawlessness and purity. From today onwards, you are a golden knight of the Knight Hall. The white-bearded old man seriously looked at Dean. But in view of your excellent performance, we will make an exception to give you a Crystal Knight medal. You will have most of the privileges and treatment of a Crystal Knight. We will replace your armor once you become a Crystal Knight. Do you understand? Dean nodded. I understand. The white-bearded old man nodded and handed over the medal to Dean. Chapter 412. Dean left the Knight's Hall and rode back to the castle after he heard about the origin of the knight profession and the rights he had at his disposal. He didn't know who leaked the news, but a large number of newspaper staff had gathered outside the castle. The scene was very crowded, and there were some disturbances. Dean felt that his body was freezing. His face was pale, but he didn't slow down as he rode straight back to the castle. Noyce, who was guarding the entrance of the castle, saw Dean from afar. He saw that Dean didn't slow down, so he opened the door to let him enter. The newspaper staff didn't dare to stop Dean as they saw him galloping. They just waited for Dean to enter. Noyce quickly closed the door and ordered everyone to retreat. The horse galloped through the manor and gradually stopped in front of the castle gate. Dean dismounted from the horse. He could not help but shiver slightly. He took a deep breath and rubbed his hands. Crone took out the blanket that was previously draped over Dean and wrapped it around him. When Dean stepped into the castle, he staggered and almost fell. His face was pale, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. The blood was pitch black and exuded a strong stench. His vision was blurred, and he hurriedly ordered before he fell, "Don't look for a doctor." He fainted before he finished his words. Crone hurried to support him, but he only had one arm, so he couldn't hold him. Gwyneth, who was dressed as a maid, rushed over and hugged Dean. She saw that Dean didn't respond, so she touched his eyelids. She frowned as she carried Dean and walked upstairs. At the same time, she looked at Crone. "Don't leak the news. Tell the people outside to get out of here." Crone reacted and quickly turned to go out. "I'll go," Nicholas said, his hunched back straightening, giving off a dignified air. Crone saw this and quickly turned to go upstairs. Gwyneth kicked open Dean's study room and carried him to the sofa by the fireplace. She looked at Crone. "Add some firewood to the fireplace. He might be cold." Crone reacted and ran away in a hurry. But he remembered that he only had one arm, and there were only a few of them in the castle. The servants were dismissed by Dean. The only idle person was Sergei. It was cold. Gwyneth touched Dean's left arm. She felt as if she was touching an ice cube. She was surprised. Previously, when she carried Dean upstairs, she felt that his body temperature was not normal. It was so cold that it was prickling her hand. She reached out and touched Dean's forehead. It was warm. Then she touched his neck artery. It was slow and cold. She reached out and touched Dean's chest. It felt like touching ice. "It's so cold." Gwyneth was surprised. His body temperature was so low, but he was still alive. It was incredible. She thought of the legendary magic mark that Dean had obtained, and her heart was moved. But on second thought, the legendary magic mark had already taken root in Dean's body. Even if it was taken out, it could not be used again. The touch of excitement in her heart suddenly calmed down. She frowned and pondered. Among the possibilities that she could think of, Dean's low body temperature could only be caused by the legendary magic mark. Was this the side effect of the legendary magic marks? Or was it something else? While she was lost in thought, Sergei and Crone brought firewood and lit it in the fireplace. Sergei gave the job of lighting the fire to Crone. He looked at Dean and then looked at Gwyneth. Did he really faint? Nothing big happened, right? Did you get attacked on the way back? Gwyneth replied, "He didn't have any injuries. Maybe he was poisoned. He ate or drank something." Gwyneth slightly shook her head. "Do you think he'll eat other people's food? Especially after the hot soup incident. Even if the Knight's Hall gave him something, he might not eat it, right?" Sergei felt that it was reasonable. If that's not the case, then is it a relapse of an old disease? He turned to Crone. "Do you know what old disease he has? Maybe we should write a letter and ask old Feline." Crone lit the firewood. He thought for a moment. He didn't know that Dean had left the orphanage. Perhaps only Patriarch Feline knew about Dean. He immediately said, "Okay, I'll write a letter to inform him." Gwyneth suddenly said, "Wait. Sergei, huh?" Gwyneth turned to look at him. If it is a relapse of an old disease, then Patriarch Feline shouldn't know about it. Otherwise, he would have asked us to inform him before he fainted. If we rashly inform Patriarch Feline, then the enemy might have planted an informant under his eyes. Wouldn't the news be exposed? He told us not to find a doctor because he doesn't want the news to spread out. Sergei shrugged. What's there to be afraid of? Who would dare to attack us? I'll kill them. Gwyneth coldly looked at him. Are you sure that you are the #1 master in the outer wall? Sergei was startled. His face changed as he closed his mouth. Let's wait for him to wake up. Gwyneth said, during this time we can't leak any information. Tell the newspaper staff to shut up. Don't they want to interview the young master about his knighthood? Pass the news to the New World News. Crone hesitated. If we don't say anything, then it will inevitably cause speculation and continue to peep. Gwyneth said, we can't hide this matter. If he wakes up and wants to blame me, then let him blame me. Crone thought for a moment. All right. Sergei looked at Dean after Crone left. He pinched Dean's face. Wow, so cold. Sergei retracted his hand and looked at Gwyneth. Is he dead? How come his body is colder than a dead person? Colder than a dead person means that he isn't dead. Gwyneth coldly said. Sergei looked at her strangely. Do you think that he is pretending to be dead to test us? Gwyneth indifferently said, I don't rule out such a possibility. You can try. Sergei shrugged his shoulders. I won't try. It won't do us any good, even if he dies. Anyway, I don't see anyone in the outer wall who is more valuable than him. Well, Gwyneth coldly snorted in disdain. Sergei laughed. Isn't it? If you want to go to the inner wall, then you can only rely on him. If you go to other consortiums, then you will be treated as a chess piece. After all, we have fought together. Even if we don't have love, we should at least have friendship. Don't be so cold to me. I can only be ruthless to you. Gwyneth indifferently replied. Sergei shrugged his shoulders as he didn't care. The temperature in the room rose as the flames in the fireplace got warmer and warmer. A few hours passed in the blink of an eye. Dean slowly opened his eyes. He felt as if his body was immersed in a bath that was half cold and half warm. He felt uncomfortable. His stomach was churning and he wanted to vomit. His head was dizzy and painful. He couldn't think as he reluctantly opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was Artemis's delicate face. Dean's heart was inexplicably warm. He didn't know why he had such a feeling. He looked up and saw Gwyneth and Gabriel sitting on the sofa. Master, you woke up. Artemis was surprised to see Dean wake up. Several people in the room were surprised and rushed over. Chapter 4:13. Nicholas, who was next to Gwyneth, carefully supported Dean's body. He took the soft pillow from Gwyneth and placed it on Dean's back. He helped Dean to lean on the sofa. Master, are you okay? Crone asked in a worried tone. Dean took a deep breath. The warm air entered his body and dispelled the cold. He reached out and touched Artemis's head. How long have I been asleep? About 6 hours. Nicholas replied. Dean was relieved. The news didn't leak out, right? No, there are only a few of us here. The staff of the newspaper have been driven away. Nicotine replied. As you ordered, we didn't call a doctor. Are you feeling better now? How about I call a doctor to take a look, and after the diagnosis, we'll kill him to silence him. Dean felt the cold air climb up from his abdomen. He took a deep breath and said, Do you remember the people I asked you to bring? There's a girl called Jura. You can call her over. Don't worry about the others. Jura? Nicholas was puzzled. Did you bring her from the civilian area? Yes. Nicholas nodded. I'll go right away. He turned and left the room. Sergei looked at Dean after Nicholas left. Are you okay? How could you suddenly get sick with your body? Did you get injured in the battlefield? Dean didn't answer. He had a faint guess in his heart, but he wasn't sure. Half an hour later, Nicholas returned with a middle-aged woman. She was dressed beautifully. But unlike most women who would put on weight when they reached middle age, her figure was still slender and straight, exuding an intellectual beauty. Jura was startled as she saw Dean lying on the sofa. Her eyes were slightly red. She hadn't seen Dean since a few years ago. She thought that she would gradually forget about the adopted child when Dean was in prison. She didn't expect that the child would come out of prison after a few years. Moreover, she learned from the newspaper that Dean was wrongly imprisoned. She wanted to come and find Dean when she heard the news. However, the boundary was like a chasm that she couldn't cross. After that, She continued to see news about Dean in the newspapers. Especially in recent times, his name had occupied almost all the pages of the newspapers. Everyone in the outer wall didn't know about him. Sometimes she even had an illusion that it was just a person with the same name. But from the newspaper report about Dean's life, she knew that he was the orphan that she had adopted. When the war broke out and she was taken to the commercial district, she was even more convinced of this point. She had been looking forward to the reunion after a long time. She wanted to have the opportunity to compensate the child. But after coming to the commercial district, she didn't see Dean as she wished. Until today, when they met again, the latter wasn't the high-spirited genius in her mind. Instead, he was weak and pale with a sad appearance. She suddenly felt a stab of pain in her heart. Although they had not been together for a long time after she adopted Dean, she had always regarded him as her own child. She thought that Dean was now living a luxurious life without worries. But after coming to the castle, she found that it was not as luxurious and gorgeous as she had imagined. She suddenly realized that this child had paid an unimaginable price to climb to today's position without anyone to rely on. All of you go out. There was a trace of complex color in Dean's eyes as he saw Jura. His voice was a bit hoarse. Crone will stay behind to take care of me. Gwyneth looked at him and turned to leave. There was a trace of strange expression on Sergei's face, but he didn't say anything. He led Gabriel and Artemis out of the room. The sound of the door closing seemed to awaken Jura. She quickly reacted and hurried forward. Were you feeling uncomfortable? Dean looked at her anxious face. There was a trace of pain in his heart. In just a few years, there were a few strands of white hair in her hair. Time was always ruthless. I feel cold, Dudian whispered. Jura quickly reached out to touch Dean's forehead. She suddenly retracted her hand. Her face was full of shock and even a trace of panic. How could it be so cold? Crone remembered that this woman was the aunt who adopted Dean. He asked as he saw her panic. Auntie, you're a doctor. Do you know what disease young master has? Jura didn't answer him as she reached out to touch Dean's neck. Then she retracted her hand to touch his arm, chest, and other parts of his body. Every time she touched his body, she would quickly retract her hand. It was as if she was being burned by fire. The surprise on her face gradually turned into panic. How can it be possible that his body temperature is so low? She was a little flustered. According to her medical knowledge and understanding of the human body, an ordinary person with such a low body temperature should have frozen to death. But Dean was still alive. It was a miracle. Dean's heart sank as he saw her panicked expression. He knew that Jura wasn't a top doctor, but her medical skills were good. He didn't expect such a reaction from her. Auntie, don't worry. Dean took a deep breath and said in a soft voice, if we can't find a reason, we could do surgery. I feel cold in my abdomen. The problem should be here. Abdomen. Jura quickly put her hand into the expensive blanket. Her fingertips retracted as she touched Dean's abdomen. How can it be so cold? She felt that even when she touched ice, it was not so cold. The coldness in Dean's abdomen was like a sharp knife piercing her hand. It was even colder than ice. However, if it was colder than ice, wouldn't Dean's body be frozen? How could a person survive if his abdomen was frozen? She bit her lips and said to Crone, help me get some hot water. Crone was anxious. He felt that he could be useful as soon as he heard Jura's words. He quickly ran. Jura squatted beside the sofa and opened her medical box. Inside the box, there were all kinds of scalpels and needles. In addition, there were gauze, hemostatic powder, anesthetic powder, and so on. She lifted the blanket and peeled off the clothes on Dean's abdomen. She used the anesthetic powder. Soon the hot water was brought. Jura took a deep breath and said to Dean, you have to endure it. Dean whispered, you do it. I'll watch. Hearing this, Jura's eyes turned red. When she operated on other nobles or rich businessmen, they were scared and closed their eyes. They didn't dare to look at the bloody picture. But from Dean's tone, it seemed that he was very calm. How many hardships did he go through to temper this calmness? She suppressed the pain in her chest. She looked at the clock on the wall and calculated the time. At the same time, she asked Crone to help her move Dean's body to the sofa. Once the anesthetic powder took effect, she would immediately start the operation. Dean asked Crone to put a pillow on his head so that he could see his abdomen. He also wanted to know if the cause of the disease was really the same as he guessed. The knife cut the abdomen, but there was no pain. Under the effect of the hemostatic powder, the blood didn't seep out too much. Jura's hand that was holding the scalpel trembled slightly. When the scalpel touched Dean's abdomen, there was a chill that spread along the scalpel. It was so cold that her fingers felt like they were on fire. She couldn't tell whether it was the burning sensation or the freezing pain. Chapter 414. He saw that under the skin layer of the abdomen, there was a layer of hardened crystals. The color of the crystals was dark red, like frozen blood. At the moment, it was like an armor covering the skin layer. At first glance, it seemed that the skin layer was just a set of soft clothes. Dean was startled, and there was a feeling of horror in his scalp. Young master. Crone's body trembled in fear. Jura's eyes were full of shock and confusion. She was stunned on the spot. Dean recovered and looked at her. What is this disease? Jura turned around and looked at him. Her eyes were full of confusion. She had never seen such a strange scene in her entire life. Under the skin layer was a hardened blood clot. Moreover, this blood clot was not an ordinary hardened blood clot. Its surface was extremely smooth. The most surprising thing was that there were orderly undulating lines on it like scales. But the strangest thing was that the owner of the body was still alive in such a situation. I don't know. Jura looked down at the dark red crystals in front of her fingers. There was a complex look on her face. It should be because your body temperature is too low, which caused the blood to harden. But she didn't know what to say. She didn't dare to blindly diagnose a disease that she had never seen before. After all, she only had one life. Even if she inferred that it was due to the body temperature, she didn't know how to solve it. Dean's heart sank as he saw her expression. Is there no way? Jura slightly gritted her teeth. I'll try. She held the scalpel to expand the area of the skin layer. However, the skin layer outside the small intestine was cut open. It was full of dark red crystals. She tried to touch it gently, but found that it was extremely cold and hard. She even suspected that the knife may not be able to pierce through the strange hardened blood. Auntie, is there no way to treat it? Crone, who was next to her, gradually adapted. He looked at Jura's bewildered appearance and said anxiously and nervously. Cold sweat oozed out of Jura's forehead. She hesitated for a moment. This thing must be removed. It may be a little painful. You have to endure it. Dean took a deep breath. You try first. I'll try to endure it. Jura nodded as she stared at Dean's abdomen. She found an edge and slowly stabbed the scalpel. The scalpel stabbed into the hardened blood. It was like stabbing ice. It made a very shallow mark. Dean saw the veins on her wrist gradually bulging. He knew that she had exerted a lot of strength. The hardness of the hardened blood was much harder than he had imagined. Although Jura was an ordinary person, but her strength was not small. But she couldn't pierce through the hardened blood. How could he cut it? Jura's strength gradually increased to about 70% or 80%, reaching the limit of her strength, but she still couldn't cut open the hardened blood. She couldn't help but loosen her hand and exhale. Her wrist was sore, but there was some fear and confusion in her heart. Something suddenly flashed in her mind. She was startled and turned to look at Dean. The confusion in her eyes gradually turned into fear and finally into self-blame and pain. Dean saw the sudden change in her appearance. He felt a trace of bad. Auntie, is this disease incurable? Jura's eyes turned red. Tears fell down. I have read in a medical book that there is a similar disease. It is extremely rare. There are very few people who have gotten such a rare disease since the birth of the giant wall. Dean's heart sank. What is this disease? Ice blood disease. Jura lowered her head. There was a crying tone in her voice. All the people who got ice blood disease eventually died. It is a rare terminal disease. Dean's heart sank. Terminal disease. This was tantamount to hearing that he had cancer. It was an instant despair. After his heart beat violently twice, The throbbing in the bottom of his heart gradually calmed down. In the old era, many cancers could be treated with the development of medical technology. The so-called terminal illness was just an illness that couldn't be cured in the medical field of a certain era. Since the ice blood disease was a terminal illness that couldn't be cured with the current medical conditions, he might be able to find a cure by relying on the knowledge in the super chip. Dean was silent for a moment. He looked at the crying Jura. "Auntie, thank you. Help me sew it." Jura was already sobbing. Hearing Dean's words, she bit her lips and held back her sobs, but tears still rolled down from her eyes. She gritted her teeth and took out a needle and thread to sew Dean's skin layer. Her handwork was very delicate, and the sewing was seamless. Dean quietly looked at her. After she finished, he asked, "Auntie, how long can I live with this disease?" Jura's body slightly trembled as she bowed her head. The records are not detailed, but it should not be long, and she looked up at Dean. "This disease is infectious. During this period, you better not drink with others. In addition, it is best not to let the Holy Church know that you have such a disease, otherwise you will be arrested and isolated." Infectious disease? Crone's face turned pale. He instinctively took a step back. Dean glanced at Crone. He looked at Jura. "I know. Auntie, you go back first. Don't mention this to anyone. If someone asks you, just say that it's just a cold." Jura burst into tears. "I'll stay and take care of you." Dean's face became indifferent. "Crone, pay the medical fee and send the guest out." Crone had a complex expression as he pulled Jura out of the room. Dean slowly closed his eyes. After a moment, he opened them again. His eyes were cold. He waited for Crone to come back. "Give me the medical books in the bookcase." Crone was startled, but immediately went over to help him. Dean put a pillow on his back and began to read the medical books that he had brought back from the library. He was busy learning the knowledge from the super chip, so he didn't have time to read these books. The name ice blood disease was obviously the name of this era. Perhaps there was such a disease in the old era, but the name was different. He wanted to know the cause of this disease and what the final outcome would be. He flipped through the books one by one. Suddenly, Dean stopped at a certain page of an old medical book. This was the autobiography of an old doctor from hundreds of years ago. On a snowy day, he was invited by an aristocrat to go out to see a patient. The patient was a squire of the aristocrat family. The patient's body temperature was extremely low. After the initial diagnosis, the doctor decided to directly perform surgery to delay the squire's life. But after the operation, the doctor found that the servant's arm had long been frozen. The ice crystals were like fish scales, and there were progressive wavy lines. Ice blood disease. There was a trace of dignified look in Dean's eyes. The hardened blood under his abdomen had extremely regular lines. It was as if it was carefully carved by a carving knife. It was very similar to the servant from hundreds of years ago. The operation failed, and I was driven out of the aristocrat's house. Later, I mentioned the matter to my friend. Soon I heard that the Holy Church had sent people to search the aristocrat's house and arrested the sick servant. Dean, carefully read line by line. From the description above, the Holy Church mentioned that the servant was suffering from a disease called ice blood disease. The name of this disease actually came from the Radiant Church. Dean was surprised. He thought that it was invented by the doctors. He didn't expect the Holy Church to take the lead in calling it out. Chapter 4:15. It's a pity that I don't have a microscope. Otherwise, I'd be able to figure out the reason for this hardened blood. If it's only frozen because of my abnormal body temperature, there shouldn't be these orderly lines. Or perhaps this hardened blood is not caused by my body temperature, but because of its appearance, my body temperature is too low. Dean frowned and sighed in his heart. It was a pipe dream to make a microscope with the current industrial technology. He looked at Crone, who was rummaging in the bookshelf. Find time to ask Noyce to bring back some medical books from various libraries. The more remote, the better. Don't use the basic ones. In addition, tell him not only to bring back medical books, but also other types of books. But don't bring too many. Just 1/5 of the medical books will do. Now our status is different. We have to be wary of villains. Our every move will be watched. but we must hide things that shouldn't be known by outsiders. Do you understand? Crone responded in doubt. He knew that Dudian chose Noyce because of his blonde hair, but he didn't understand why Dudian chose only 1/5 of the other books. Shouldn't the more the better? Crone knew that Dudian had chosen Noyce because of his blonde hair. He didn't ask because he knew that Dean wouldn't answer such a simple question. He had to figure out the answer himself. Crone found several medical books from the bookcase and put them in front of Dean. Dean was thinking as he flipped through the books. The source of the cold air comes from my abdomen. When I was captured by Splitter in his cave, Scar blocked Splitter's sharp blade for me. Scar cut off my waist and made a big hole in it. I was mixed with the corpses of other monsters, so the wound was infected by other monsters. Most of the people who got the ice blood disease in the past had contact with monsters. In the beginning, he had the immunity of the Defiler magic marks, so he didn't have any abnormalities. But since he had the Splitter magic marks, his body had changed. The last time he came back from a giant wall, he felt that his body was a bit cold. But he didn't have a solution even though he knew the reason. Moreover, he didn't know how long he could live if he got this strange disease. God want me to die prematurely. God is jealous of geniuses. Such a thing will fall on my head. God, don't you think too highly of me? Dean gently rubbed his fingers. There was a trace of coldness in his eyes. Several days passed in the blink of an eye. In the past few days, Noyce used Dean's identity to borrow a lot of books. Most of them were medical books. The rest were miscellaneous books. There were books about the history of the giant wall, the barbarians' history, the biographies of legendary inventions, the fragments of classical music masters, and so on. How was the Mellon Consortium these days? Dean casually asked Crone as he looked at the medical book in his hand. He tried to find the cause of the disease and diagnostic clues. He had no time to read the newspapers or understand the situation outside. Crone replied, Master, Mellon Consortium collapsed after the old patriarch George was imprisoned. The Mell family has also plummeted. Their industries have been boycotted by the people. They are losing money every day. Many hotels, theaters, and other places in residential areas have been destroyed by mobs. It is estimated that they won't be able to hold on for long. Tell old Feline to seize the opportunity. If the people's anger subsides, then it will take a lot of effort to completely destroy the Mell family. Dean said. Crone nodded as he sighed in his heart. He was a famous aristocrat in the outer wall, but now he was reduced to this point. He recalled the time when a little gardener of the Mell family went to the orphanage for adoption. He had most prominent identity and was the object that everyone wanted to adopt. However, he was an old aristocrat after all. He didn't collapse even under the pressure of Dean. If it was any other small aristocrat, then their whole family would have been in prison by now. He said that it is forbidden to touch the soul crystal if there is a wound on his hand, so as to avoid being trapped inside the soul crystal. Unexpectedly, Dean was startled as he saw a medical case. It was about a clergyman infected with ice blood disease. You need to take a lot of sugar. The staple food is beef. Take the medicine on time. You can live for 2 years or 1 week. If you don't pay attention to keeping warm, then your body temperature will be too low. Avoid touching cold water, black snow. Dean was struck by lightning as he read the last part of the case. 2 years at most. Short 1 week? Isn't this the same as terminal cancer in the old era? He was stunned for a moment. He looked down again and again until he was sure that he wasn't wrong. He was at a loss. Did it mean that he had less than 2 years left? 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. Countless sketches flashed through his mind. Each of them was the ideal in his heart. However, there was no way to realize these ideals. His heart was empty, and he was in a daze. Crone's face changed as he saw Dean's strange reaction. He looked at the book in Crone's hand and carefully asked, Master, what's wrong? Dean's eyes gradually focused. He was silent for a moment. It's nothing. You go out first. Crone was worried. He wanted to say something, but hesitated. He turned and left. He gently closed the door and quietly waited outside. Dean looked at the distance in a daze. His eyes were filled with confusion. A long time passed. The scenery outside gradually darkened. The night was reflected in his eyes. It seemed to add a bit of light. His eyes gradually recovered from a numbness. He looked down at the book in his hand. Sugar, beef, these are all high-calorie foods. According to the book, if I eat these high-calorie foods, I can suppress the outbreak time of the ice blood disease. If I eat food with more calories than sugar and beef, it should not be difficult for me to live for 2 years, or even longer. The people who got ice blood disease shouldn't be as strong as me. If my physique is higher, then my resistance will be enhanced. Maybe I can hold on for a longer time. Thinking of this, the despair in his heart gradually recovered a strong hope and desire, as well as a longing for life. In 2 years' time, I will master the medicine of the old era. Then I will try my best to find a solution. Even cancer has been solved. What is this? Terminal disease? It's just that it's an incurable disease in relative terms. Since it's called an incurable disease under such simple conditions, I'll change the world in these simple conditions. I'll make it an ordinary disease that can be easily treated. Dean's eyes glowed with tenacity. When he was captured by the splitter in the cave, he survived. How could he admit defeat for this little disease? Crone, Dean called out. Crone, who was guarding outside the door, hurriedly pushed the door. Master, I'm here. In the future, my clothes will be made of the best thermal materials, including my armor. Dean said. In addition, from today on, I will eat a piece of tooth crab rib for every meal. Crone was surprised. Tooth crab? Master, this is one of the most expensive ingredients. It's taken from the front rib of the monster tooth crab. An adult tooth crab's front rib is only half a caddy. It's only enough for 1 meal. Tooth crab is rare and difficult to catch. Nobles will snatch it as soon as it appears. They have to eat it every meal. Is it difficult? Dean's face turned cold. Even if I have to sell dragon meat, I have to buy it. If anyone doesn't want to sell, then I will grab it. Chapter 416. Crone smiled as he hesitated. I'll try my best, master. It's not your best, but it's a must. Dudian added. In addition to the tooth crab rib, my tableware needs to be made by the most expensive master. The water I drink must be purified water that has been repeatedly filtered. Crone was startled. He wanted to ask Dudian if there were any benefits to eating the tooth crab rib, but now it seemed that it was purely a matter of Dudian's own preference. Would people become so extravagant after they become rich and famous? He bowed his head. Master, do you have any other orders? Dean thought for a moment. Inform the temple that I want the temperature in the lecture hall to be higher on the day of my public lecture. You can think about the reason yourself. I know. I'll keep a secret. Crone nodded with a trace of worry in his eyes. Young master, are you feeling better? Teaching is very tiring. Can you bear it? I won't fall that easily. Go and call Artemis. Yes, master. Father, is Grandpa really not able to be bailed out? Sarah looked at Mark. Her eyes were red and swollen. She was full of pain and remorse. Mark sighed. I have contacted several generals in the military. It's impossible to bail him out. They can only let him live a better life in prison. He won't be humiliated. Sarah's tears fell as she clenched her fists and said, Father, let's send someone to assassinate him. Ram must have been ambushed by him. This time we will send everyone and certainly kill him. As long as he is dead, sooner or later we will be able to restore our original state. Then we will be able to bring Grandpa back. Stupid. Mark angrily rebuked her. Have you forgotten what I taught you in the past? The more dangerous the situation is, the calmer you are. Remorse and pain won't let you act recklessly. Assassinate him? Have you investigated how many people are protecting him in the dark? The military, the magistrate, the Holy Church, none of them will let him die. If he dies now, it doesn't matter if we kill him or not. We will be the first to bear their wrath. The Holy Church alone is enough to exterminate our entire race. Sarah's body trembled. The word extermination shook her heart. She instantly sobered up. Father, Mark coldly snorted. I have investigated in the past few days. On the day of Ron's accident, one of the 2 senior knights left the castle and went to the Moulin Rouge to have fun. The only one left was the woman who used to be a gold medal punisher. It's impossible to stop Ron unless there was a sneak attack. Or there are other masters hidden in this kid's hands. That person is probably the old butler. Sarah was startled. Father, you mean to say that he has 3 senior knight powerhouses helping him? Not bad. Moreover, this kid is an intermediate hunter. Coupled with a magic mark, he can barely fight against an ordinary senior hunter. If you want to kill him, then you need to gather all the experts of the 2 consortiums. Mark's eyes were cold, but there are many ways to kill him besides the sword. I have posted a reward notice in the Dark Church. Whoever can kill him will get 5 million gold coins. Even if we keep this money, sooner or later it will be nibbled away by the kid. He won't let us go. Either he dies or we die. Sarah took a deep breath. Father, you actually asked the Dark Church for help? Mark looked at her coldly. What? Do you think it will dirty your hands if you don't use such a good sword? No, it's not. Sarah continued. It's just that in this sensitive period, if the Holy Church finds out, Mark sneered, Holy Church? What we merchants sell are real goods. The Radiant Church is quite smart. They sell some imaginary things. Only these fools would believe them and willingly give them money. Sarah's face changed. Father, do you think the Dark Church has the ability to kill him? The strength of 3 senior knights is equivalent to the strength of most consortiums. Mark indifferently said, even if they can't kill him, they can make him live cautiously. Don't underestimate the Dark Church. They have vicious potioneers and alchemists. It's impossible to guard against them, unless the Holy Church sends a group of guys to guard him. Otherwise, he will die. When Sarah heard this, she was relieved. Her eyes flashed with a trace of resentment. What about the recent divestment? We don't have much time. Ulfoline has swallowed up our industry. If there isn't much left, then we should throw it all away. Mark changed the topic. Father, it's useless. He said that he won't see me again. It's useless even if I beg him. Jenny was dressed in the robes of a priest. Her eyes were red as she looked at her father in front of her, who had recently become thin and seemed to have experienced some vicissitudes of life. Rudolph sighed. Melon Consortium is finished. Mel family will also be finished. Bourron family won't be able to escape this calamity. Only you can resolve the hatred in his heart. Otherwise, our Bourron family will be completely destroyed by him. Jenny bit her lower lip as she lowered her head. Miss, please help me. I'm begging you too, the housekeeper said as he knelt down and begged. Jenny hurried to help him. Uncle, don't be like this. Miss, I won't get up if you don't go. The butler begged as he knelt down. Jenny hurriedly said, Please get up first. Rudolph quietly looked at the scene. After a moment, he sighed. Get up. The butler was startled as he looked at him. Rudolph waved to Jenny. Jenny hesitated for a moment, then slowly walked towards him. Tell Dad that you really don't want to see him. Rudolph stroked her hair as he whispered. Jenny pursed her lips and clenched her teeth to prevent herself from crying. She said, I can't go back with him anymore. Rudolph took her into his arms and gently patted her shoulder. He sighed and whispered, If you don't want to go back, then don't go. I won't force you. I won't force you to do things you don't want to do. As long as you're happy and do what you really like to do, you don't need to worry about the family. I will handle it. Jenny burst into tears as she choked with sobs. This is the bitter fruit that I have sown. Since the business failed, then I should bear the losses. Rudolph gently stroked Jenny's hair. I don't believe that I can't make the Bourron family rise again in the next 20 or 30 years of my life. Jenny wiped her tears as she looked up at him. I will work hard with you. Rudolph was startled. His eyes were slightly sparkling as he looked up and laughed. Well, let's work hard together. The butler hurriedly said after Jenny left. Master, the situation is critical now. That kid will be more powerful after the public lecture. He will crush us easily. Why did you stop Miss from interceding? Interceding will only make us more humble. Rudolph's smile disappeared as he slowly said, Moreover, he climbed all the way from prison to his current position. What did he rely on? It's not love, but hate. Hate can make a person crazy. The motivation of hatred is far stronger than love. Chapter 417. Master, what do you mean? The butler was confused. Rudolph continued. Do you really think that he wants to retaliate against the Melon Consortium? Yes, everyone thinks so. But everyone is wrong. He doesn't want to deal with us because of resentment. He has no choice but to deal with us. The Melon Consortium is his only enemy. Moreover, it is an irreconcilable enemy. If he chooses to deal with other people, then he will have one more enemy. So he can only compete with the Melon Consortium. The choice is not in his hands. Moreover, in the eyes of the other consortiums, this is something that they are happy to see. If there is a chance, they might even help him and make this knife sharper. The butler was startled. After a moment, he sighed. Master, he has changed from a weapon to a master. The Melon family has fallen. The next one will be us. Rudolph slowly said, Have you ever thought why the Mel family was the first to fall, and not our Bourong family? The butler's eyes lit up. Master, are you saying that he still has feelings for Miss? That's why he didn't deal with us? If that's the case, doesn't that mean we can still? Rudolph squinted at him. When did you become so stupid? The butler was stunned. Do you really think that this monster still has feelings in his heart? Do you think that feelings can affect his judgment? Rudolph said in a cold voice. The butler's face slightly changed. Master, if he doesn't have feelings for Miss, then what is the reason? Rudolph said, There are two reasons for this. The first one is that he has feelings for Near. But in my opinion, this possibility is so low that it can be ignored. Therefore, it can only be the second reason, and this reason also fits with his style of doing things. The second reason? In the past, he was just a weapon. The Scott Consortium was willing to help him in his fight against the Melon Consortium. Other consortia were willing to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. If necessary, they would secretly help him. But now it's different. As you said, he has turned from a weapon to a master. Now that he is in the spotlight, he will have to face the attacks of other masters. Rudolph slowly said, For him, the real battlefield has just begun. The other consortia won't tolerate the growth of such a monster. The military won't allow it, and the Holy Church won't allow it. Once the New World Consortium continues to expand, it will annex the other 5 consortia. Then even the Holy Church and the military will have to step back. At that time, he will no longer be a small consortium. He will be able to influence the structure of the military and the Holy Church. No matter which side he goes to, the other side will be a threat. This is not the situation that the military and the Holy Church are willing to see. The butler was startled. Master, you mean to say that the reason why he dealt with the Mel family is not because he is merciful to us, but because he wants to defeat the Melon Consortium first? He wants to get rid of an enemy so that he won't be besieged by the other consortia? Yes, Rudolph said. The Mel family is in charge of the Melon Consortium. If the Mel family falls, then the Melon Consortium will disband. Now that he's a double legendary master, any financial group that he joins will become the target of public criticism. Of course, this doesn't mean that he's a disaster for the financial group. On the contrary, he'll become a target that everyone hopes to rope in. However, if he's bound to a financial group, he'll become a thorn in everyone's side. The butler understood. Everyone knows about his relationship with the New World Financial Group. He's tied to the New World Financial Group. It's not a cooperative relationship that can be severed based on interests alone. In this way, the New World Financial Group will be attacked by all the other financial groups, including the military and the Radiant Church, who will secretly suppress them, right? The military and the Holy Church won't take action for the time being. The next situation will depend on his own performance. Rudolph said, Nothing will happen if he is willing to be a consortium. But if he doesn't know his place, then he will be finished no matter if he is a master or not. After all, these titles are just a title created by the people in power. If his existence violates the rights of the people in power, then he can only swallow the bitter fruit. In short, he shouldn't care about us at this time. But we have to make a stand. Since if it doesn't want to go and apologize, then you will go on her behalf. Rudolph nodded. Me? Remember to prepare a gift. We will use all our properties in the commercial district as a congratulatory gift. The butler was shocked. Master, how go? Is there any news from the Ryan family in the last 2 days? Dean casually asked as he flipped through the book. Crone shook his head, no. Dean nodded and handed him a drawing. Give this to the Ryan family. Tell them to build it before sunset. Crone took a look. It turned out to be a huge cage. He was surprised, but didn't ask anything. He turned away and left. Dean called Nicholas after Crone left. There are a few people in the Mellon Consortium. I need you to help me find them. You used to be a butler of the upper class, so I will leave this matter to you. They are my friends, so try to protect them and don't let them get hurt. Nicholas was surprised. I know. He turned away and left. After a moment, Crone returned and said, Master, Noyce personally sent a message. Do you still want to eat toothed crab ribs tonight? Sergei went to several markets today, but they didn't sell it. Dean raised his eyebrows. Don't tell me that the entire outer wall doesn't sell it and you're looking for suppliers? As long as there is one, then send it to my table. Do you understand? Crone scratched his head and said, Young master, I heard that the Brandon family bought several toothed crabs for the banquet tonight. Go and buy them. Dean interrupted him. Crone carefully said, But master, the Brandon family is an upper-class aristocrat. They have a lot of properties under their command. If they don't want to sell. Chapter 4:18. Master, won't we offend people? Crone asked in a weak voice. Dudeen indifferently said, If I offended you, then I offended you. Just do it. All right. Crone didn't expect Dudeen to be so persistent about food. Should I ask Sergei to buy it now? Tell Noyce to go with him. Dudeen said, Tell him to let the other party offer a price first. If he doesn't sell, then we will rob him. I want to see if he has the guts to not sell. Okay. Crone came to the hall and passed Dudeen's words to Sergei and Noyce. Sergei asked, Did he really say that he will rob if he doesn't sell? Yes. Crone was very sure. Sergei was stunned. I didn't expect him to be a foodie. All right, I promise to bring it back for him. Sergei patted Noyce's shoulder and called him to take the horse. Both of them rode out of the castle and headed towards the Brandon family's territory. Linner, is the hall ready? Cage came down the stairs and looked at the busy attendants in the magnificent hall. He asked a tall girl who was talking to her maid. The girl was about 18 or 19 years old. She was wearing a luxurious golden dress, which was embellished with countless crystal lights. It was extremely dazzling. One would need to think to know that this expensive evening dress was made by a master tailor. Father, it's almost ready. We're just waiting for the guests to arrive. When Lin Na heard her father's words, she gracefully walked over with a smile on her face. Cage laughed and said, Your Uncle William is coming today. I heard that his son is now a second-level Knight of Light in the temple. He also likes Mr. Hemming's music, which is the same as you. You should talk more about it at the banquet. Linner's face turned red. Dad, what are you talking about? Today's banquet is obviously prepared for you and Uncle William to congratulate him for his promotion. How can it be related to me? Silly child. Cage laughed. At this time, a middle-aged butler in a black tuxedo quietly came out of the crowd. He bowed and said, Master, there are two people outside who want to see you. They claim to be Master Dean's attendants. Master Dean? Cage was surprised. Lena's eyes lit up as she looked at the butler. Is it the genius Master Dean? The housekeeper said respectfully, Yes, Mississippi. Is it really him? Lena was a little excited. She grabbed Cage's hand and said, Father, did you inform him? Is he also here to congratulate Uncle William? Cage was puzzled, but when he heard her words, his heart moved. He said to the housekeeper, Let them in. Yes, master. The butler turned and left. Lin Na's eyes were filled with excitement as she looked at the back of the housekeeper. Dad, it's my birthday in a few days. Can you invite Master due to my birthday party? If he appears, my friends will be envious of me. I heard that Master Dean is not only skilled in divine arts, but he is also a gold knight. He is handsome and knows how to compose poems. He is perfect, Cage helplessly said. Don't think too much about it. Our Brandon family can't climb up to such a person. Lena slightly pouted as she heard her father pour cold water on her. What are you thinking about? I didn't say that I want to find him. I'm his admirer. I just want to see him in person. Cage helplessly shook his head and didn't say anything. At this moment, the butler returned from outside, followed by two tall and burly figures. One had golden hair, and the other had a burly figure. Judging from their clothes, they were indeed servants. He glanced at them and noticed that the two did not bring any gifts. His heart was slightly moved. "Greetings, Mr. Brandon Cage," Sergei politely said as he came in front of Cage. Cage smiled. "Both of you are too polite. Please sit down." "No need," Sergei whispered as he saw that no one was paying attention to them. "Patriarch Cage, our young master asked us to visit you and ask for something." "Ask for something?" Cage was slightly startled. He asked calmly, "What is it?" "Tooth crab," Sergei calmly said. "Our young master has recently fallen in love with some delicious food. We have searched everywhere and heard that the last tooth crab in the market was bought by your servant. So we have come to ask for it. Patriarch Cage, please rest assured that we will pay 3 times the price for it. I hope you can help us." Cage and Lena looked at each other. They never thought that the other person would come to ask for an ingredient. "So he likes to eat toothed crabs." Lena secretly noted this down, and her heart rippled. Cage slightly frowned as he pondered. Nowadays, the situation outside was in constant turmoil. He knew that this talented young master was the main force that defeated the Melon Consortium. Every time a behemoth fell, the dust would cover the eyes of many people. However, the Brandon family was a powerful family. They knew what kind of changes would occur in the pattern of the commercial district. "Patriarch," Sergei asked again as he saw that Cage didn't speak. Cage took a look at him and hesitated for a while. Then he said in a deep voice, "Go back and tell Master Du that this is an item for tonight's banquet. I'm sorry that I can't resell it. If Master Du likes it, I'll find it in a few days and send it to him." Sergei raised his eyebrows. "Patriarch, you are too stingy. We are only asking for an ingredient. Moreover, we are asking for 3 times the price. Is the face of our young master so worthless? Or are you not going to give him face?" Lena didn't expect her father to refuse. She pulled her father's arm. "Dad, give it to them. We can replace it with something else." "No." Cage's attitude was tough. "This is the rule of our family. Moreover, the menu has been published. How can we change it at will?" Sergei narrowed his eyes. "Is that so? Patriarch, can you let us see the tooth crab? Isn't this request too much?" Cage's face softened. "No problem. I will personally take you to see it." He turned around and led the way. Sergei winked at Noyce. Noyce understood and said, "I'll wait for you here." Sergei nodded and followed Noyce to the kitchen. Cage ordered the chef to bring out the tooth crab. Sergei looked at it. It was a black crab with a big head. The difference between it and ordinary crab is that it has sharp teeth. It specializes in eating underwater fish. It can even eat big fish. Because of this, the cost of raising it is very expensive. Moreover, it is easy to have accidents when fishing. Therefore, it is rare in number. Only a few people are willing to breed it. Most of the tooth crabs are wild in the radiation area or in some desolate lakes. "It's cute." Sergei reached out to touch it. Cage raised his eyebrows. He felt that the servant's behavior was somewhat frivolous. At this time, Sergei quickly grabbed the box containing the tooth crab. He easily knocked away the 2 chefs next to him. He turned around and ran away. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the night. Cage was stunned. All of this happened as fast as lightning. He didn't react for a long time. After Sergei ran for some distance, he recovered. He couldn't help but shout, "Catch him!" The surrounding servants immediately chased after him. Sergei's speed was extremely fast. He directly jumped over the wall of the manor. Whoosh! A figure quickly chased after him. Sergei looked back and laughed. "If you can catch up, then I will give it to you." He quickly entered the street outside. The figure chased after him at full speed. His speed was comparable to Sergei's. He stopped for a moment and turned back to the castle. He didn't want to lure the tiger away from the mountain. That night, there was a sensational news from the Brandon family. Someone had robbed the food for the banquet. The person claimed to be Dean's servant. Under the cover of the night, The news spread like a spider's web through the intricate and complicated intelligence network. Chapter 419. Master, Sergey, and the others are back. Crone respectfully said. Dudian asked while reading the book. Did you buy it? I didn't buy it. They snatched it back. Crone secretly looked at him. Oh, go and do it. I'm hungry. Dudian's plate was filled with fried teeth crab ribs. Others' plates were filled with high-quality beef. He asked Crone while eating, I'll be teaching in a few days. Have you contacted the tailor for warm clothes? Yes, they're working on it. Crone replied. Dudian nodded and looked at the oil on the plate. I'll use rhinoceros tiger oil or walleye fish oil. I'll prepare it tomorrow. Crone was startled but whispered. Sergey looked at Dudian. You have been feeling better in the last 2 days. Don't tell me that you ate this thing. You weren't so picky before. Dudian glanced at him but was too lazy to answer. He ate a few pieces of teeth crab ribs. He felt the coldness in his body was alleviated. He got up and said, Crone, come to my study room after dinner. Oh. Crone quickly finished his dinner after Dudian left. He came to Dudian's study room. Master, what can I do for you? Come in. Crone pushed the door and saw Dudian sitting in front of the desk, writing something. He didn't ask anything, but quietly waited for Dudian to finish writing. He shook the paper in his hand. The ink absorption effect of the snow paper was very good. He handed it to Crone. This is my menu in the future. All the ingredients will be selected from this list. If the market is out of stock, then go and buy it. If the market isn't selling, then rob it. Crone looked at it and was speechless. He felt a chill in his throat and said, Young master, will you only choose from this? Yes. Crone felt a little weak. He had never heard of the names of many of the ingredients on the list, but some of the ingredients he had heard of were all precious and expensive top-notch ingredients. Even the most famous hotels might not be able to afford them. For example, toothed crabs, which were rare and expensive. A toothed crab was equivalent to the savings of an ordinary family for 7 or 8 years. In addition to the tooth crab, there was also the lake toad. It was a relatively rare, edible monster. Moreover, he also saw Kamisai caviar and Snow Mountain truffles on the menu. The former was a well-known top-notch delicacy that ordinary nobles couldn't afford, let alone the latter. Even if one had the money, one couldn't buy it. It was a natural ingredient that would only appear during the coldest days of the black snow season every year, but to encounter it required luck. As a result, many commoners would station themselves in the northern snowy mountains to search for Snow Mountain truffles during the black snow season. As long as they found the authentic truffles, they would become rich overnight. However, the process of searching for truffles was extremely dangerous, and many people died every year. Crone was shocked. He slowly put away the expensive menu. Master, some of these ingredients are very complicated. We don't have a professional chef. Even if we buy them, we won't be able to handle them well. It's easy to waste them. Do you want to hire one? Dudian replied. The hired person isn't trustworthy. In a few days, there will be a new partner joining us. Buy some ingredients that are easy to make. Crone was startled. I know. Mr. Chai, that's it. Do you think I should send someone to ask him for an explanation? Cage slowly narrated what had happened and asked the middle-aged man in front of him. Chai's eyes flashed as he held a glass of red wine in his hand. I have already heard about this matter. The 2 men are indeed his attendants. He connived his men to rob us because he wanted to see our reaction. I didn't expect that he would move on to our Scott consortium. He really doesn't know the immensity of the heavens and earth. Cage frowned. Our consortium has cooperated with him many times. We shouldn't have offended him. Why did he choose us? Chai narrowed his eyes. It should be about the new textile machine. This kid is quite vengeful. New textile machine? Cage was startled for a moment. The new textile machine had tampered with their share. However, we only reduced their share for the first 2 months. After that, we still gave them the usual share. Why would they fall out with us? When he bailed out the senior hunter called Sergey, he offended the Krulov consortium. Why didn't he retaliate against them? Chai was silent for a moment. We can't let this matter go. Since he wants to test our reaction, then we will let him see. You go back and send someone to his door to ask for an explanation. I want to see how he will respond. I know. Cage nodded. Huashan Consortium. Wallace family. Master, I just got the information that the Dark Church has issued a high reward for the assassination of the Genius Master. The butler said in a very light voice. Master, should we secretly push it? Hank folded the newspaper in his hand and smiled. No need. This kid is too young. He has just swallowed the Melon Consortium and hasn't digested it yet. Now he has provoked the Scott Consortium. I thought that he would form an alliance with the Scott Consortium. It seems that I was worried for nothing. I remember that the Scott Consortium had tampered with a new textile machine. I wanted to give this to him to sow discord between them. It seems that he already knows about this matter. The butler looked at the newspaper in Hank's hand and said, he picked the banquet to cause trouble for the Brandon family. Is he trying to test the reaction of the Scott Consortium? The Brandon family has lost their face. They will certainly look for him for an explanation. Let's see how he responds. Master, what about our previous plan? Put it aside for the time being. We will wait until they are tired, and then we will act. Green Consortium.